The twin sons of Virelia 9, Sol Alpha and Sol Beta, hammered the ochre plains, a relentless celestial duality casting stark, elongated shadows that warped the already profoundly alien landscape. Dust, finer than powdered rust and tasting metallic on the tongue, coated everything: the heat-stressed silicate flora, the wind-carved mesas, the humming banks of resonance sensors. Dr. Elias Carrick was meticulously calibrating. His research station, a prefabricated composite dome clinging precariously to a low, windswept mesa, felt like an island of Terran logic adrift in an ocean of cosmic strangeness. The air itself vibrated, thin and carrying the scent of hot rock and something else. Something indefinably ancient. Elias, a man more comfortable mapping quantum wave functions than navigating the unpredictable currents of human interaction, found a peculiar, resonant peace in the stark desolation. Here, the universe seemed to whisper its foundational secrets through the subtle vibrations of the planet itself, a phenomenon the interstellar science Concord, with characteristic blandness, had dubbed planetary resonance. His mission, somewhat obscurely defined, was to understand it. He adjusted a final microdial, the sensor array emitting a low, harmonious chime that resonated pleasingly, a pure tone against the planet's deeper thrum. It was lonely work, profoundly isolating, punctuated only by the sigh of the wind and the crackle of his instruments. Yet, the potential discoveries felt monumental, worth the solitude, worth the endless, soul-aching expanse of reddish-brown stretching to horizons forever blurred by shimmering heat haze. He was meticulously logging the day's baseline energy readings, noting the steady, almost musical pulse of Virelia's ambient field. When a discordant shriek ripped through the data feed, it was an angry, jagged tear in the planet's usual symphony, visualized on his console as a chaotic spike of incoherent energy. Not geological tremors. He knew their signature, not meteorological interference. The pattern was wrong. This felt violent, artificial, deeply wrong. Alarm bells, both literal within the station and figurative within his own chest, began to chime. Elias scrambled to activate the station's long-range optical scanners, his fingers flying across the controls, directing the powerful lenses towards the calculated epicenter of the disturbance. Several clicks west across the fractured, sun-baked Badlands, the image resolved slowly, fighting through the atmospheric shimmer and dust devils dancing below. What emerged chilled him, despite the oppressive, furnace-like heat radiating through the dome's viewport. A vessel, impossibly sleek. Its design disturbingly biomechanical, like polished carapace fused with metallic sinew, lay broken, impaled against a jagged rock spire. It bore no resemblance to any Concord or known alien configuration. Smoke, thick, black, and smelling acrid even through the station's filters, billowed from its ruptured hull, a stark, ugly slash against the pale twin-sun sky. A wreck. Catastrophic. Recent protocol screamed in his mind. Years of training asserting themselves. Report immediately. Maintain distance. Await instructions. Concord regulations were crystal clear. Immutable commandments regarding unauthorized contact, especially with unknown, potentially hostile non-human technology. Isolation was safety. Procedure was survival. But the resonance field, the instruments monitoring it, depicted something beyond shattered metal and leaking energy cores spilling onto the Virelian dust. The field around the crash site pulsed, throbbed with something raw, something primal. It pulsed with fear, a sharp, piercing note of pure terror that resonated not just through his finely tuned sensors, but through something deeper within him, a sympathetic vibration in his own gut. Just anomalous energy signatures, he muttered, trying to rationalize it. But the feeling persisted, insistent, undeniable. Against his better judgment, against the ingrained scientific detachment that had become his shield, against a veritable mountain of regulatory compliance directives. Elias moved. He grabbed a standard medkit, its contents suddenly feeling inadequate. He filled a hydro canteen, the gurgle of water loud in the sudden silence. He unclipped his personal sidearm from its charging station, a compact energy pistol he'd qualified with yearly but rarely had cause to even unholster. Just in case, he told himself, the thought feeling thin. He secured the research station, the automated defense systems whirring into lockdown mode behind him, sealing him out as much as sealing it in. Then, he climbed into his surface rover, a rugged, over-engineered six-wheeled vehicle designed specifically for Virelia's treacherous, rock-strewn terrain. The drive was rough, the rover bucking and jolting over eroded gullies and crystalline outcrops that glittered sharply under the binary glare. The closer he got, the stronger the sense of distress became. No longer just a data point, but a palpable psychic scream echoing in the planet's background. Hum. A sound beneath sound that made his teeth ache. He parked the rover behind a ridge offering partial cover, a safe distance away, cutting the engine. The sudden silence was profound, broken only by the insistent crackle of dying fires from the wreck and the whisper of the hot wind through the canyons. The metallic tang of ozone and burnt wiring hung heavy in the air, sharp and unpleasant. The silence felt weighted, expectant, as if the entire planet held its breath. He moved cautiously towards the wreck on foot, his heavy boots crunching on crystalline debris that glittered like shattered amethyst scattered across the ochre dust. The ship's design was even more unsettling up close. Its curves and plates blended seamlessly, reminiscent of insectoid chitin and vertebrate bone, yet clearly artificial. Strange symbols, vaguely familiar in their geometric complexity yet utterly unplaceable, were etched deep into the hull plating, now scorched, twisted, and weeping strange, iridescent fluids. He circled the main breach, a gaping maw of torn metal and sparking, ribbon-like conduits that spat angrily. Inside, the darkness was almost absolute, punctuated by the erratic, failing flicker of emergency lights casting long, dancing shadows. And then he saw it. Movement. A small shape, huddled amidst the twisted debris and spilled cargo, barely visible in the oppressive gloom. Elias raised his hand slowly, palm outward, a universal gesture he hoped transcended species. "Hello," he called out, his voice sounding unnaturally loud, intrusive in the confined, echoing space. "Is anyone there? I'm here to help." A pair of eyes snapped open, startlingly large and luminous, glowing with a soft, intrinsic violet light. They fixed on him, wide with undiluted terror. The figure uncurled slightly, revealing a child, unmistakably alien, yet recognizably a child. Her skin was the delicate color of twilight lavender, smooth and seemingly seamless, catching the faint light. She was small, perhaps equivalent in size to a human child of 6 or 7 Terran years, clad in simple, torn garments of a strange, silvery fabric that seemed to shimmer faintly even in the dimness. She trembled violently, a continuous tremor running through her small frame, pressing herself deeper into the wreckage as if trying to merge with it. A low, guttural whimper escaped her lips, a sound of pure misery. Elias slowly lowered his hand, keeping his movements deliberate, unthreatening. "It's okay," he said softly, pitching his voice low and calm, trying to project reassurance he absolutely did not feel. The implications were already crashing down on him. I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Elias. He took a single, cautious step closer. The girl flinched violently, her luminous violet eyes tracking his every fractional movement. He could see now she was severely dehydrated. Her skin lacked its full vibrancy, stretched taut over fine bones. Her lips cracked and pale. Dust and grime streaked her face and arms, mingling with tears that left silvery trails. She was clearly traumatized, lost in the shock and horror of the crash. Focus, Elias, he told himself. Science later. Survival now. He knelt down a few meters away, a respectful distance, placing the medkit and the hydro canteen carefully on the debris-strewn deck between them. You're safe now, he continued, forcing a calm cadence into his words, trying to project an aura of benign intent. Safe. What a lie. The reality of harboring an undocumented alien child, especially one from a completely unknown, technologically advanced species whose ship had just crashed under potentially hostile circumstances, was staggering. It violated dozens, perhaps hundreds, of Concord regulations, xenocontact protocols, quarantine procedures, non-interference directives. Yet, looking into those terrified, soul, deep glowing eyes, protocol felt like a distant, irrelevant abstraction written by faceless bureaucrats light years away. This was a child, alone, hurt, frightened. He slowly, deliberately, pushed the canteen towards her with one finger. Water, he said simply, clearly, pointing to the canteen. Then gesturing towards his own mouth, she watched him, her head tilted slightly. The violet eyes narrowed in intense concentration, processing the gesture. After a long, agonizing moment where Elias felt his own breath catch, she hesitantly reached out a slender, three-fingered hand, the fingers long and elegant, and dragged the canteen closer. Her fingers fumbled with the cap for a second before she managed to twist it open. She drank greedily, desperately, water spilling down her chin onto her torn silvery tunic. Elias waited patiently while she drank, using the moment to quickly scan the immediate surroundings within the wreck. No other survivors were visible in the gloom. The silence pressed in again, absolute save for the girl's ragged, gasping breaths and the faint, ever-present hum of the planet's core energy field, which seemed, subjectively, to thrum with a slightly less frantic, piercing energy now. Subjective analysis, unscientific. He pushed the thought away when she had finished drinking, gulping down nearly half the canteen's contents. She pushed it away slightly, her gaze still fixed on him, wary but perhaps fractionally less overtly terrified. Progress. What's your name? Elias asked gently, knowing the words themselves were likely meaningless, but hoping the questioning tone, the softening of his voice, conveyed his peaceful intent. She made a soft, complex clicking sound deep in her throat, a sound that vibrated strangely in the air, carrying harmonics his ears struggled to parse. It wasn't language as he knew it, but it felt responsive, like an attempt. He pointed carefully to himself. Elias. Then he pointed gently towards her. She looked at his pointing hand, then back at his face, her large eyes seeming to peer directly into his thoughts, unnervingly perceptive. After another pause, a moment stretched thin by tension, she whispered a single word, soft and melodic, yet utterly alien. Nyra, Nyra. The name itself seemed to resonate, settling into the space between them, just like the planetary field beneath their feet. Elias offered her a small, tentative smile, feeling the muscles in his face strain with the unfamiliar effort. Nyra, it's nice to meet you. He knew. with chilling certainty. He couldn't leave her here. The wreck was unstable, groaning ominously around them. The Virelian environment was lethally hostile to unprotected life. And reporting this, would likely mean containment, endless study by Concord xenobiologists. A cold, clinical fate he couldn't stomach imposing on this terrified survivor. He had to take her back to the station. It was a monumental, career-ending, potentially freedom-forfeiting risk, violating first contact protocols on this scale. But the alternative felt like a betrayal, not just of her, but of some fundamental principle of compassion he hadn't realized he held so strongly until this moment. "Come with me, Nyra," he said softly, standing up slowly, carefully, extending his hand towards her, palm up. "I have a place. It's safe, warm, protected." She hesitated, her luminous violet eyes searching his face, assessing him with an unnerving flicker of understanding, of calculation. That seemed far beyond her apparent physical age. Then, with a deep sigh that seemed to shudder through her small frame, a sigh of exhaustion and perhaps tentative trust, she reached out and placed her small, cool, three-fingered hand in his. Her touch sent a peculiar, faint tingle up his arm, a distinct echo of the planet's subtle energy field. He gently helped her stand, her legs unsteady beneath her. Together, cautiously, they picked their way out of the ruined vessel, emerging from the shadowed maw into the harsh, double glare of the twin suns. He didn't know it then, couldn't possibly comprehend the vast tapestry of consequence spooling out from this single act. But this sheltering of a lost alien child had just irrevocably altered his future, binding him to ancient laws, cosmic destinies, and dangers he was utterly unprepared for. The life field of Virelia 9 hummed around them, a silent, potent witness, sealing a pact Elias Carrick didn't even know he had made. The research station, once his solitary sanctuary of sterile order, felt both profoundly alien and strangely intimate with Nyra inside. She explored the compact living quarters, barely more than a control center, a tiny galley, a sleeping alcove, and a hygiene unit with wide, cautious eyes, her bare lavender feet making no sound on the metallic floor panels. Elias had cleaned her up as best he could, tending to minor scrapes and bruises with antiseptic wipes and nutrient paste bandages from the medkit. Her physiology was remarkably resilient. Small cuts seemed to seal themselves with alarming speed, leaving only faint, silvery lines like etched circuits on her skin. He offered her concentrated nutrient bars, standard bland emergency rations. She nibbled at one hesitantly, her small nose wrinkling slightly, before consuming it with quiet, focused intensity. Communication remained a significant challenge, a frustrating exercise in pantomime, gestures, tone of voice, and the occasional, almost startling flash of shared understanding that seemed to pass between them, without words, perhaps. Elias theorized, facilitated by the ever-present planetary energy field acting as a subtle conduit. Nyra rarely spoke, her vocabulary apparently limited to her name and a few soft, complex clicking sounds or melodic hums that Elias couldn't begin to decipher, though he diligently recorded them. Yet, her silence wasn't empty, it was watchful, intensely intelligent. She observed everything, the way he manipulated the station's holographic consoles, the swirling patterns of complex resonance data on the main display tracking the planet's quantum heartbeat, even the mundane cycle of the air recycler. "What are you thinking?" he often wondered, looking at her inscrutable face. Elias dedicated himself to making her comfortable, diverting energy from some non-essential sensor arrays to slightly raise the ambient temperature, hoping it was closer to her native environment. He created a small sleeping pallet for her in a quiet corner shielded from the main console lights. Using spare thermal blankets, he tried, with limited success, to maintain some semblance of his research routine, logging sensor readings, analyzing geological data, but his focus was constantly, magnetically pulled towards the small, violet-skinned girl who now shared his isolated existence. The sheer weight of his secret pressed down on him. He meticulously scrubbed any mention of her presence, any anomalous biological readings, from his official logs transmitted back to the Concord network. He rerouted sensor data streams that might betray her unique biological signature, creating layers of electronic subterfuge and false positives that made him profoundly uneasy, a betrayal of his scientific oath to truth and transparency. Here he was, actively concealing a first contact scenario of potentially galactic significance. The cognitive dissonance was jarring, a constant hum of anxiety beneath his surface thoughts. But the protective instinct Nyra evoked, fierce and unexpected, was stronger than his adherence to rules. He found himself watching her sleep sometimes, the soft violet glow of her eyes dimmed behind closed lids, her small chest rising and falling in a steady, peaceful rhythm. A fierce, almost paternal protectiveness settled over him, solidifying his resolve. Whatever the cost, he thought, I'll keep her safe. He tried gently to learn more about her origins, showing her complex star charts on the main holographic display, pointing towards different constellations, nebulae, galactic clusters. Hoping for some flicker of recognition, she would watch the swirling star fields, billions of points of light reflecting in her luminous eyes, her expression unreadable, sometimes letting out a soft, mournful hum that tugged at his heartstrings, but giving no specific indication of her home system. The wreckage of her ship offered frustratingly few clues. Its primary system seemed designed to self-scramble upon catastrophic failure, leaving only fused circuits, shattered data crystals, and indecipherable alien metallurgy that defied his scanners. The strange, intricate symbols etched onto the hull remained his only tangible lead, but hours spent cross-referencing them against the vast Concord databases of known alien scripts, symbologies, and cultural markers yielded absolutely nothing. Nyra, her people, her ship, they were complete, baffling unknowns. The days bled into one another, measured by the dual passages of Sol Alpha and Sol Beta across the alien sky, settling into a strange, suspended rhythm. Nyra slowly, cautiously, began to trust him. Occasionally, she offered a tentative, fleeting smile that lit up her small face. Once, she brought him a peculiarly shaped, smooth black rock she'd found during one of their brief, carefully supervised excursions just outside the station dome. Placing it solemnly in his hand, the planet's energy field remained unusually active, often spiking in direct correlation with Nyra's apparent emotional state, a surge of bright, harmonic energy when she actually laughed, a rare, delightful sound like tiny bells. At one of Elias's clumsy attempts at juggling ration packs, a dip into melancholic, low-frequency resonance when she gazed longingly at the unfamiliar constellations in the night sky. It was fascinating, terrifying data. It strongly suggested the field wasn't just a passive planetary phenomenon. It was interactive, responsive, perhaps even sentient in a way his Terran science couldn't yet comprehend. And Nyra seemed intrinsically, deeply linked to it, a living tuning fork resonating with the planet's soul. On the 7th Virelian day since the crash, the station's perimeter proximity sensors screamed a high-priority alert, a piercing sound that shattered the quiet routine. Elias's blood ran cold. He checked the signature instantly. Not Concord. The energy profile was wrong. Too powerful, too focused, exhibiting characteristics he'd only seen in classified military briefings. He brought the external cameras online immediately, his hand automatically moving towards the reassuring weight of his sidearm holstered at his hip. A ship, impossibly sleek and significantly larger than Nyra's wrecked transport, was descending rapidly through Virelia's thin, dusty atmosphere, its trajectory aimed with unnerving precision directly at his station. It bore the same unsettling biomechanical aesthetic as the wreck, the same enigmatic symbols etched onto its dark, iridescent hull, symbols that now felt menacing. It had landed with an unnerving, almost predatory silence 100 meters from the dome, its landing struts unfolding like the articulated limbs of some giant insectoid hunter. Nyra, who had been carefully examining a data crystal displaying planetary harmonics, looked up sharply, her eyes wide, the violet glow intensifying dramatically. She made a soft, distressed sound, a choked gasp, and instinctively scrambled behind Elias, clutching tightly at the fabric of his trousers, her small body trembling again. A ramp lowered smoothly, silently, from the vessel's belly, extending onto the dusty ochre ground. A figure emerged, silhouetted starkly against the fierce glare of the twin suns. As the figure walked purposefully towards the station, details sharpened through the heat shimmer, and Elias felt his breath catch in his throat. It was a female, tall and undeniably imposing, clad in segmented armor that seemed grown rather than forged, echoing the ship's organic metallic design. Her bearing was regal, radiating an aura of absolute command that transcended species. Like Nyra, her exposed skin possessed a subtle violet hue, though deeper, richer, like twilight shadows compared to Nyra's lavender dawn. Her features were striking, sculpted with an elegance that was simultaneously beautiful and severe, almost harsh. Long, dark hair, intricately braided with metallic filaments that caught the light, cascaded down her back. Her eyes, the same luminous, soul-deep violet as Nyra's, were sharp, fiercely intelligent, and currently fixed on the research station dome with unnerving, penetrating intensity. She moved with the fluid, economical grace of a predator. A seasoned warrior, Elias forced himself to act, activating the external comms system. "Identify yourself," he ordered, his voice tight, betraying the adrenaline surging through him. "This is a restricted interstellar science Concord research outpost. State your purpose. You are violating restricted airspace." The woman stopped just beyond the dome's main transparent entryway, close enough for Elias to see the intricate detail on her armor, the slight rise and fall of her chest. Her voice, when it came through the comms, was resonant, perfectly calm, yet carried an undeniable, steely undercurrent of authority. It was perfectly modulated, standard Terran galactic English, but overlaid with an exotic, subtly musical cadence. "I am Kaelith of Sarn Leora," she stated simply, her unwavering gaze seeming to pierce the reinforced transparency, meeting his directly. "I track the distress signal of a transport vessel carrying my daughter. My long-range scans indicate a life signature matching hers originating from within your facility." A slight pause, heavy with implication. "Release her to me." Human, her daughter. The words struck Elias with the force of a physical blow. Of course, the resemblance was suddenly obvious. In the eyes, the skin tone, the certain regal set of the features, evident even in Nyra's small childlike form. He glanced down at Nyra, who peeked out cautiously from behind his leg. her wide eyes fixed on Kaelith with a confusing mixture of awe and distinct apprehension. But not the joyful, tearful recognition Elias might have expected from a lost child seeing her mother after a traumatic separation. There was no cry of relief, no rush towards the entryway, just watchful, unnerving silence. Something felt off. Your daughter, Elias stalled, his mind racing, trying to process the implications, the conflicting signals. There was a crash, yes, a terrible one. I found a survivor, a child. She was alone, terrified. Nyra, Kaelith supplied, her voice softening fractionally, almost imperceptibly, though her eyes remained hard, guarded. Her name is Nyra. I am here to reclaim her. She held up a hand, elegant and strong. A complex holographic document shimmered into existence above her palm, intricate alien script interwoven with flowing biometric data streams and official-looking seals that pulsed with faint, internal energy. This verifies my maternal claim and custodial rights under the foundational laws of Sarn Leora, and by extension, the relevant articles of the Cathar Concordat governing interstellar child welfare and repatriation, to which your Concord is a provisional signatory. Specifically, Article 7, Subsection Delta, Parental Reclamation. Elias stared at the shimmering, intricate document, momentarily stunned by its complexity, its technological sophistication, and her casual, precise invocation of interstellar law. He vaguely recalled skimming during densely packed orientation briefings years ago. He didn't truly doubt the validity of her maternal claim, the resemblance, the advanced technology. Her sheer presence spoke volumes, but something still felt fundamentally wrong. Kaelith's demeanor was too controlled, too rigidly formal. There was a distinct lack of overt maternal warmth, a strategic, almost glacial coolness that set his nerves on edge. And Nyra's reaction, her palpable apprehension rather than relief, was deeply, profoundly unsettling. She's safe here, Elias found himself saying, trying to inject firmness into his voice, buying time. Though for what he wasn't sure, she's been through a significant trauma, requires stabilization. Perhaps you should come inside. Allow her to reacclimate slowly. Avoid further shock. Kaelith's expression didn't flicker. Not a muscle moved in her sculpted face. That is unnecessary. My vessel possesses full medical and psychological stabilization facilities far superior to this outpost. She will be better cared for with her own kind. She took a deliberate step closer, her presence seeming to press against the dome. However, Dr. Elias Carrick, she continued, her use of his full name sending another jolt of unease through him. How did she know it? There is an unforeseen complication arising from your intervention. According to ancient Virelian planetary law, specifically the Edict of Shelter, a foundational code which predates your Concord's claim to this system by several millennia and, crucially, remains locally sovereign under Concordat Treaty. By providing unsanctioned refuge to a minor of noble lineage separated from her designated guardian during a crisis, you have inadvertently, yet bindingly, invoked the right of protection. Elias frowned, the alien terms jarring against his scientific lexicon. Right of protection, Edict of Shelter. 1. I don't understand. What did local tribal laws have to do with anything? It means, Kaelith stated, her voice utterly devoid of inflection, flat and final, that by sheltering my daughter in her moment of distress, you have legally become her secondary guardian under Virelian statute, and the law here, Doctor, woven into the very energy field of this planet, is immutable. It recognizes your act of compassion as a formal undertaking. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. The edict is explicit. The designated guardian of a protected child whose biological parent presents themselves is required, obligated, to unite with said parent. Another pause, even heavier, to ensure the child's continued stability and uninterrupted protection within a legally recognized family unit. Her violet eyes locked onto his. The law demands our union. Formalized. Within 3 planetary rotations. That is approximately 3 of your standard Earth days. Elias stared at her, dumbfounded, his brain struggling to parse the implications. Union. Formalized. You mean? The word felt absurd, utterly alien on his tongue. Marriage. A binding legal contract, Kaelith confirmed, her expression unreadable stone. Mandated by the sovereign laws governing this specific planet. Laws my people respect deeply, and which, it seems, your unsanctioned presence and subsequent actions now make you subject to. The implicit threat was clear. Refusal carries severe penalties under the Cathar Concordat regarding interference with established local sovereign law and customs, potentially including, but not limited to, forfeiture of your research data, confiscation of this station, and your own person being remanded to local Virelian authorities. She didn't need to elaborate on what local authorities might entail on a planet with millennia-old, energy field-enforced laws. Authorities who would, I suspect, be exceedingly displeased by the unauthorized harboring of an alien minor of noble blood outside established channels. His mind reeled, struggling for purchase. This couldn't be happening. Marriage. To this imposing, enigmatic, potentially dangerous alien warrior queen, or whatever she was. Because he'd helped a lost, terrified child. It was utterly insane. A bureaucratic nightmare spawned from cosmic coincidence and ancient legal codes. Yet, her calm certainty, the intricate holographic legal document she had displayed, the chilling way she knew his name, it all pointed to a reality far more complex, intricate, and perilous than he had ever imagined when he signed up for isolated planetary research. Nyra pressed closer against his leg, her small hand gripping his trousers tighter. A silent, desperate plea for continued sanctuary. Kaelith watched them both, her luminous violet eyes assessing, calculating, patient. The twin suns beat down mercilessly. The planet's subtle energy field hummed its incessant song around them, and Elias felt the carefully ordered foundations of his world cracking, threatening to shatter beneath his feet. He was trapped, caught between Concord regulations he had already broken, inscrutable alien law, and his own inconvenient conscience. And the imposing, armored figure waiting just outside the dome held the key. Or perhaps the cage. The air inside the station thickened with unspoken tension, the hum of the life support seeming louder, more intrusive. Elias stared at Kaelith, who had deactivated the complex holographic document but remained poised just outside the transparent entryway, an unnerving image of regal, unwavering patience. Nyra still clung tightly to his leg, her small body radiating tension like a miniature generator. Marriage. The concept remained so ludicrous, so profoundly disruptive to his life's meticulously planned trajectory, his research, his very identity as a solitary scientist, that a hysterical laugh threatened to bubble up. Yet, Kaelith's unwavering gaze and her precise, unhesitating recitation of layered interstellar and local law suggested this was no elaborate, cruel jest. She clearly believed it, implicitly, and she possessed the bearing of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question, someone for whom laws were concrete, tangible forces, not abstract principles debated in distant council chambers. This is entirely unexpected, Elias managed, his voice tight, strained. He felt Nyra flinch slightly at his tone. Lady Kaelith, I am a research scientist. My presence here, my actions, are governed solely by interstellar science Concord protocols. This station, my research data, are currently in flagrant violation of several key Concord directives due to your unauthorized harboring of Nyra Kaelith interrupted smoothly, clinically, preempting his intended argument. Her knowledge of Concord procedure was disturbingly accurate, and, more significantly, from an interstellar legal standpoint, your compassionate but unsanctioned actions place you squarely under the jurisdiction of the Virelian Edict of Shelter. My arrival, as the presenting biological parent, formalizes that jurisdiction. She tilted her head slightly, a subtle, almost condescending gesture. The choice before you is remarkably simple. Doctor, comply with the local sovereign law, thereby ensuring Nyra's emotional stability within a legally recognized framework and, incidentally, granting me presence here a legal standing sufficient to oversee her recovery without triggering a major diplomatic incident between Sarn Leora, Virelia, and your Concord, or face the consequences. She let the pause hang, consequences which, I assure you, will be far more disruptive to your precious research, and indeed your freedom, than a temporary legal arrangement. Temporary. The word snagged his attention like a fishhook. He seized on it. Temporary. Kaelith inclined her head slightly, a minuscule concession. The edict mandates the union be formalized within the 3-day period to establish the protective family unit required by statute. It does not, however, explicitly specify its required duration beyond the immediate stabilization and integration period for the child. Her eyes met his directly across the transparent barrier, sharp and assessing. We require a mutually beneficial solution, Doctor, one that satisfies the precise letter of the ancient law, protects Nyra above all else, allows me temporary but legally unimpeachable sanctuary on this planet under the universally recognized guise of family unification, a necessity for complex reasons I am not yet at liberty to disclose, and permits you to continue your work without immediate Concord interference or severe local sanction. She paused again, seemingly choosing her next words carefully. I propose, therefore, a temporary arrangement, a contract, a mariage de convenance. As I believe your Terran history terms it, we fulfill the explicit legal requirement of the edict. You retain shared guardianship alongside me, satisfying the right of protection you invoked. I gain temporary, legally sound sanctuary. Nyra remains protected by both of us under Virelian law. Once the immediate situation necessitating my presence here is resolved, the contract can be dissolved under mutually agreeable terms, citing fulfillment of the edict's primary objective. Elias processed this rapidly, his scientific mind dissecting the proposal, stripping away the absurdity to analyze the underlying logic. A fake marriage, a pragmatic legal fiction designed to navigate a bizarre, unforeseen intersection of ancient planetary law, interstellar politics, and his own impulsive act of kindness. It was still certifiably insane, but it offered a potential, albeit perilous, path forward, a way to protect Nyra, shield himself from immediate repercussions, and potentially salvage his research from the bureaucratic black hole Kaelith hinted at. Her motives, however, remained deeply opaque. Why did she, a figure of apparent power and authority, Need legal sanctuary on this remote rock. What situation was she referring to with such guarded language? Her lack of overt, demonstrative emotion towards Nyra still bothered him immensely, suggesting layers of complexity far beyond a simple maternal reclaim mission. But her logic was cold, clear, and ruthlessly pragmatic. It appealed, disturbingly, to his own analytical way of thinking. Despite the sheer madness of the context, he looked down at Nyra. She gazed back up at him, her luminous violet eyes trusting, yet clouded with an intuitive understanding that seemed far too deep for her apparent physical age. Whatever dangers Kaelith was fleeing from, whatever situation necessitated this elaborate charade, Nyra was clearly, terrifyingly, at the center of it. His burgeoning protective instinct warred violently with his ingrained scientific caution and deep-seated aversion to complication. "Why do you need sanctuary?" he asked directly, pushing past the legal maneuvering. "What aren't you telling me?" Lady Kaelith. Kaelith's sculpted expression tightened fractionally, the first sign of inner turmoil he'd seen. "My daughter and I are fugitives, Dr. Carrick," she admitted, her voice dropping slightly, losing some of its resonant authority, replaced by a weary tension. "Powerful, relentless enemies hunt us across the sectors. Revealing more details at this juncture would place you, and by extension, Nyra, in significantly greater danger." Her eyes implored him to understand. "For now, please accept that this arrangement offers the safest, most legally defensible course for all three of us. It provides a crucial legal shield recognized by multiple interstellar authorities, including, crucially, your own Concord, under established family unification statutes and non-interference clauses regarding local sovereign law. Fugitives, hunted." The words resonated chillingly with the palpable fear he'd sensed emanating from the crash site. The terror in Nyra's eyes. It explained Kaelith's guardedness, her warrior's posture, her almost desperate need for a legally sound, unassailable reason to remain hidden on this remote, Concord-controlled planet, a fake marriage, mandated by ancient local law triggered by his own actions, provided that perfect, albeit bizarre, cover. He thought again of the planet's strange energy field, how it reacted to Nyra, to proximity, to emotion. Could this union, even a fabricated one, have unforeseen consequences tied to Virelia's unique physics? The scientist in him, the part that drove him to this isolated outpost in the first place, was morbidly intrigued, even as the rational man recoiled from the sheer insanity. 3 days, Elias murmured, thinking aloud, processing the timeline. "We perform some ceremony, sign some ancient document, a simple affirmation ceremony before a designated Virelian resonance conduit," Kaelith explained, sounding relieved he wasn't outright refusing. "Acknowledging the edict's invocation and our mutual agreement to uphold its tenets regarding Nyra's protection, the planet itself, through its energy field, acts as witness and registrar. Its field will record the established legal bond," she added, almost as an afterthought. "It is remarkably efficient." She didn't elaborate on what precisely Arsenon's conduit was, or how a planet could act as a legal registrar. He looked from Kaelith's imposing, armored form to Nyra's small, hopeful face pressed against his leg. Refusal meant abandoning Nyra to unknown, potentially hostile authorities, facing immediate and severe Concord sanctions, almost certainly losing his life's work and potentially his freedom. Acceptance meant stepping willingly into a bizarre, dangerous, complex charade with a fugitive alien warrior queen he knew virtually nothing about. But acceptance kept Nyra safe, under his continued, now legally fortified. Protection. It also, the scientist in him noted with a flicker of inappropriate curiosity, allowed him to potentially study the resonance field's reaction to this unique, unprecedented situation firsthand. It was the choice that aligned, however strangely, however perilously, with his initial, instinctive act of compassion. "All right," Elias said, the single word feeling incredibly heavy, momentous, sealing his fate. He felt Nyra squeeze his legs slightly. "All right, Lady Kaelith, for Nyra's safety and for the continuation of my research, I agree. A temporary arrangement, a legal fiction." Kaelith gave a single sharp decisive nod. A flicker of profound relief crossed her features, visible for only an instant before being masked again by her regal composure. "Prudent, Dr. Carrick. A wise decision." She straightened slightly. "I will transfer the necessary legal documentation, including the full text of the Edict of Shelter and relevant concordat cross-references, from my vessel to your station's primary systems for your review. They are encoded in standard Terran legal formats, alongside the original Virelian edict translation for transparency. Her efficiency was military grade. We will conduct the affirmation ceremony tomorrow, precisely at the peak of Sol Alpha's transit across the meridian. Be ready." Without another word, she turned, her armor glinting under the twin suns, and strode back towards her sleek, silent ship with the same purposeful, predatory grace. The ramp retracted smoothly, and the vessel lifted, silently, effortlessly, ascending back into the vibrant, dust-hazed sky. Elias and Nyra were left standing in the sudden, profound quiet, the immense weight of their impossible agreement settling around them like the fine Virelian dust. Nyra looked up at him, her violet eyes searching his face. She reached out and took his hand again, her small, cool fingers closing trustingly around his. The planet's pervasive energy field seemed to hum with a new, complex frequency, a subtle but distinct shift in the background symphony of Virelia 9. It felt like anticipation, or perhaps, Elias thought with a shiver despite the heat, judgment. He wasn't sure which prospect was more terrifying. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of strained interactions, surreal preparations, and gnawing anxiety. Kaelith, true to her word, transmitted the legal files, dense, intimidating documents filled with archaic Virelian terminology, intricate Sarn-Leoron legal precedents, and cross-references to obscure interstellar treaties Elias had never even heard of. He spent hours attempting to decipher them, his knowledge of interstellar jurisprudence rudimentary at best, relying heavily on the Terran translations provided. The core principle, however, remained starkly, unavoidably clear. The Edict of Shelter was absolute, immutable law on Virelia 9, enforced by the planet's own unique energy field, and their union was the only viable path to satisfy its requirements without invoking dire, multi-jurisdictional consequences. Kaelith remained aboard her orbiting ship, communicating sporadically via encrypted, tightly focused comms bursts. Her messages were brief, practical, devoid of personal detail, focusing solely on the logistics of the upcoming affirmation. Nyra, sensing the shift in dynamics, the underlying tension, stayed unusually close to Elias, her usual quiet curiosity now tinged with a palpable anxiety. She seemed to understand, on some deep, intuitive level, the gravity of the situation, occasionally looking towards Kaelith's ship, a faint, dark speck against the bright sky, with an unreadable, complex expression. Elias found himself constantly glancing between the child, the legal texts, and the sky, feeling trapped in a bizarre science fiction plot he hadn't written. As the first son, designated Sol Alpha by the Concord chronometers, began its slow, majestic climb towards its zenith, casting shorter, sharper shadows across the ochre plains. Kaelith's ship descended once more, landing silently, precisely, beside the station dome. This time, when the ramp lowered, she emerged, not in the imposing battle armor, but in flowing robes of deep violet and shimmering silver fabric that seemed to capture and refract the light of the twin suns, like captured nebulae given form. The effect was no less imposing, perhaps even more so, emphasizing her regal stature and otherworldly grace. She carried a small, ornate crystalline device, roughly spherical, that pulsed with a soft, rhythmic internal light. "It is time, Dr. Carrick," she announced, her voice calm, resonant, carrying easily through the thin air. "The resonance conduit has been prepared." Elias hesitated, feeling a fresh wave of unreality wash over him. Where is this conduit?" He gestured vaguely at the desolate landscape around the station. "A short distance from here," Kaelith replied, gesturing towards the west, back towards the general area of the crash site. A natural geological formation, exceptionally attuned to the planet's primary energy field. Suitable, indeed designated by ancient tradition, for the edict's affirmation. She looked down at Nyra, who watched her with wide, solemn eyes. Kaelith's expression softened almost imperceptibly, a fleeting warmth touching her features. "Nyra will accompany us. Her presence, as the subject of the edict, is integral to the rite." Nyra nodded silently, understanding crossing her small face. She took Elias's offered hand in one of hers and then, after a moment's visible hesitation, reached out her other small hand towards Kaelith. Kaelith looked down at the small, lavender-skinned hand offered so tentatively. A flicker of complex emotion, surprise, pain, regret, crossed her features before she gently, carefully, accepted it. The three of them, an unlikely triad, walked out of the station's airlock and into the intense glare of Sol Alpha at its peak. Kaelith led the way, the crystalline device held aloft, pulsing softly. As they walked across the dusty plain, Elias noticed the ambient resonance field intensifying dramatically, the air itself seeming to vibrate with latent energy, making the fine hairs on his arms stand on end. The sensors back at the station, he knew, would be going absolutely wild, logging unprecedented energy levels. They reached a shallow, natural basin where weathered, wind-sculpted rock formations rose like ancient, forgotten standing stones. In the precise center of the basin lay a large, smooth slab of obsidian-like rock, dark and polished by centuries of wind and dust. It hummed faintly, audibly, and complex patterns of soft, internal light swirled just beneath its glassy surface. This, Elias surmised with a knot forming in his stomach, must be the resonance conduit. Kaelith guided them to stand directly before it. She placed the crystalline device she carried onto the center of the obsidian slab. Instantly, the patterns of light within the slab intensified, swirling faster, brighter, bathing the small basin in an ethereal, pulsating glow. The humming deepened, becoming a palpable vibration felt through the soles of his boots. The Edict of Shelter, ancient law of Virelia, has been invoked by compassionate action, Kaelith declared, her voice resonating with newfound power, echoing slightly as if the rock itself were amplifying her words. "I, Kaelith Morales Vandrin of Sarn Leora, biological parent and primary guardian of the child Nyra, acknowledge the protector, Elias Carrick of Terra Sol System." She turned her luminous violet gaze fully upon Elias, the light from the conduit reflecting in their depths. Do you, Elias Carrick, accept the binding role of secondary guardian alongside me, uniting under the edict to ensure the welfare, stability, and protection of the child Nyra, as mandated by the sovereign law of Virelia, witnessed by this planet? Elias swallowed hard. The weight of the moment, the sheer cosmic strangeness of it all, pressing down on him. He looked down at Nyra nestled between them, who watched him with absolute trusting eyes. He looked at Kaelith, her usually severe regal facade momentarily softened, made vulnerable by the conduit's ethereal light. This was madness, certifiable, unadulterated madness. But it was necessary madness. For Nyra, perhaps, he admitted to himself, even for him. I accept, he said, his voice steadier than he expected, surprisingly firm. I accept the role of guardian. For Nyra, as the final word left his lips, the obsidian conduit flared blindingly, sending a pulse of palpable energy radiating outwards. The ground beneath their feet vibrated strongly. The air shimmered visibly, distorting the surrounding rock formations. Elias felt a strange, undeniable connection form, an invisible, yet tangible, tether linking him, Kaelith, and Nyra, anchored somehow deep within the planet itself. It wasn't painful, but it was profound, unsettling, utterly real. The planet's resonance field surged violently, reaching a peak intensity Elias had never conceived possible, let alone recorded, then slowly, gradually, subsided to a new, significantly higher baseline hum, imbued with a complex, layered harmony that hadn't been present before. The intense light from the conduit dimmed, the swirling patterns within the obsidian slowing to a gentle, rhythmic pulse. Kaelith retrieved her crystalline device, its internal light now steady and bright. It is done, she announced, her voice returning to its usual calm, measured cadence. Though perhaps with a new underlying resonance, the union is affirmed, the edict is satisfied, the bond is recorded. Legally, irrevocably, they were now bound, a family unit, recognized and recorded by an ancient planetary law, enforced by forces beyond conventional understanding. A Terran scientist, a fugitive alien queen, and an alien child with mysterious, potent connections to the planet's core energies. As they walked back towards the research station, an uneasy, charged silence fell between them. The immediate legal necessity was met, the crisis averted for now, but the underlying tensions, the vast oceans of unanswered questions, remained. Kaelith's desperate need for asylum, the shadowy enemies hunting them, Nyra's true nature and origins, the full implications of this forced, planetary witnessed bond, all loomed large and ominous in the twin sunlight. Yet, as they walked, Elias noticed something extraordinary, something impossible according to his Virelian ecological surveys. Small, iridescent flowers, of a species he had never seen before on this barren mesa, were beginning to push determinedly through the dusty soil along their path, unfurling delicate, shimmering petals towards the dual suns. The air temperature seemed fractionally, perceptibly warmer, the ever-present wind gentler, carrying a faint, sweet scent he couldn't identify. It wasn't just his imagination. He checked his environmental wrist sensor. The planet was responding. The resonance field, energized and altered by their affirmation ceremony, was actively, tangibly changing the environment around them. This wasn't just mysticism or ancient legal theater. As Kaelith had hinted, it was physics, quantum resonance, triggered and modulated by emotional proximity, legal formality, and perhaps Nyra's own latent abilities, reshaping local reality. Their fake marriage, intended purely as a legal shield, a pragmatic deception, was already having tangible, unpredictable, world-altering consequences. The implications were staggering, blowing the parameters of his original research mission completely out of the water. Elias Carrick, the detached scientific observer, was now inextricably, fundamentally part of the experiment, bound to its outcome in ways he was only just beginning, terrifyingly, to comprehend. Life within the confined dome settled into a new, inherently unstable, and often deeply awkward equilibrium. Kaelith took up residence in the station, nominally sharing the cramped space, though she spent much of her time in silent contemplation, reviewing complex data streams on a personal holographic projector, or monitoring encrypted, short-burst transmissions from her orbiting vessel. The enforced proximity, the sheer lack of personal space, forced a level of daily interaction that was frequently awkward, occasionally tense, yet sometimes surprisingly companionable. They were legally bound, co-guardians of Nyra under bizarre alien law, yet remained virtual strangers, separated by species, culture, light years of experience, and vast personal secrets Kaelith guarded fiercely. Elias tried valiantly to focus on his research, compiling his observations on the altered planetary field. But the data was now almost overwhelmingly complex, defying his previous models. The baseline energy signature had shifted dramatically, fundamentally, since the affirmation, and it fluctuated constantly, reacting with bewildering sensitivity not just to Nyra's moods, which were becoming more expressive as she felt safer, but also to the subtle, shifting emotional undercurrents between him and Kaelith. A brief, sharp argument over station resource allocation. Kaelith had strong opinions about optimizing power distribution, caused localized energy spikes outside the dome, and triggered a brief, completely unexpected hailstorm of tiny, perfectly formed crystalline particles that pinged against the transparency. Conversely, a shared moment of genuine concern when Nyra tripped and scraped her knee during an excursion resulted in a warm, harmonic pulse that made the station lights glow noticeably brighter for several seconds and seemed to accelerate Nyra's already rapid healing. The planet was listening, responding, its unique physics inextricably, unnervingly tied to their forced intimacy, their shared guardianship, their fluctuating emotional state. Elias found himself observing Kaelith more closely, trying to reconcile the imposing, regal warrior queen with the guarded, often withdrawn woman sharing his cramped living quarters. She possessed an understated, innate grace, even when performing mundane tasks, like recalibrating the station's atmospheric filters, which she did with surprising, effortless expertise. Commenting drilly on the somewhat primitive Terran design, she rarely spoke of her past, her home world of Sarn Leora, or the specific reasons for her exile, deflecting his cautious, tentative inquiries with polite but firm evasiveness that effectively shut down conversation. Her interactions with Nyra remained puzzling, a complex blend of emotions. There was undeniable, fierce love there, visible and fleeting, unguarded glances and gentle, almost hesitant touches when she thought Elias wasn't looking. But it was consistently overshadowed by a profound sadness, a heavy weight of responsibility, and perhaps guilt, that seemed to distance her from the simple, spontaneous joys of motherhood Nyra occasionally offered. Nyra, in turn, treated Kaelith with a mixture of respect, affection, and a subtle wariness, but often sought out Elias for comfort, play, or simple companionship. Her bond with him, seemingly simpler, less burdened by unspoken history and cosmic stakes. He became the default teller of admittedly clumsy bedtime stories, the fixer of broken toys improvised from spare parts, the recipient of small, treasured gifts like the black Virelian rock. One Virelian evening, marked by the setting of Sol Beta while Sol Alpha still hung high in the sky, Elias was analyzing a particularly complex, almost melodic resonance pattern on the main console when Kaelith approached silently, observing the swirling, multi-hued data streams over his shoulder. The faint scent of something floral and alien accompanied her, a personal scent generator perhaps. The field continues to strengthen, she commented, her voice neutral, analytical. Its response to our proximity, and the Edict bond is more pronounced, more rapid than even our oldest Sarn-Leoran texts predicted. Elias nodded, not looking away from the screen, captivated by the intricate dance of energies. It's unprecedented. The ambient energy levels are orders of magnitude higher than anything recorded before the crash, before your arrival. It's as if the planet itself is becoming more aware, more interactive, waking up in a sense. He hesitated, then decided to push, emboldened by the shared scientific observation. You knew something like this might happen, didn't you? The affirmation ceremony, the resonance conduit. It's somehow connected to why you specifically needed to stay here. On Virelia 9, isn't it? Beyond just legal sanctuary. Kaelith was silent for a long moment, her gaze fixed on the flowing data, her reflection faintly visible on the screen's surface. Virelia's life field is unique in the known galaxy, she said finally, her voice low, almost reluctant. It resonates not just with geological forces and stellar radiation, but with life, with consciousness itself, particularly with certain sentient bloodlines attuned to its specific frequencies through ancient genetic adaptation. My people, the people of Sarn-Leora, have known of this place, this energy. For millennia, it is considered sacred ground, a place of profound balance, a potential amplifier, and your bloodline. Kaelith, it's attuned. Elias pressed gently, sensing a crack in her guarded facade. Yes, she admitted quietly, the admission seeming to cost her, as is Nyra's. Inherently, our presence here naturally amplifies the field. Your presence, Dr. Elias, now bound to us by the ancient edict, further modulates it, interacts with it, in ways even our oldest prophecies did not fully foresee. She turned then, slowly, to face him, her luminous violet eyes searching his, probing. The stability of this field, Elias, is crucial, critically important, not just for Virelia, perhaps not even primarily for Virelia, but potentially for interconnected systems far beyond this sector. And its stability, its harmony, is now inherently, inextricably linked to Nyra's well-being, her emotional state, and, she paused, her gaze intensifying, to the integrity, the authenticity, of the bond mandated by the edict between us. Before Elias could fully process the staggering implications of that statement, authenticity, a piercing alarm shrieked violently through the station, overriding all other sounds. The perimeter breach alarm. Bright red emergency lights flashed rhythmically, bathing the small space in a pulsating, urgent glow. Warning! Intruder alert! The station's synthesized voice announced, calm yet chilling. Unidentified hostile biosignature detected penetrating sector gamma perimeter defenses. Instinct.raw and primal took over. Kaelith moved with blinding blurring speed, faster than Elias would have thought possible. A hidden compartment in the wall slid open at her gesture, revealing compact, elegant energy weapons. She plucked one, its surface shimmering like her robes. Checking its charge in a single fluid motion, Elias grabbed his own Concord-issue sidearm from its holster, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Nyra, get back! Stay down!" he yelled, pushing the startled child towards the relative safety of the shielded sleeping alcove. Kaelith was already at the main entryway viewport, peering intently through the reinforced transparency into the swirling ochre dust kicked up by the incessant Virelian wind. "There," she breathed, her voice tight, pointing towards a flickering, almost invisible distortion shimmering near the western sensor array pylon. "Advanced camouflage tech. Null signature suit. Professional. They found us," Kaelith stated grimly, her voice flat, devoid of surprise, laced only with cold tension. "Faster than I anticipated." "Who?" Elias demanded, positioning himself beside her. Weapon raised, scanning the perimeter through the dusty haze. "Who aren't they?" "An agent of Regent Varn," Kaelith replied without looking at him. Her eyes narrowed, scanning the swirling dust for movement. "The usurper who seized the throne of Sarn Leora, murdered my consort, and forced us into exile. He wants Nyra, or rather," her voice became suddenly venomous, "what she carries within her." The distortion near the sensor pylon shimmered again, and a figure abruptly coalesced from the dust-laden wind. Tall, lean, encased head to toe in form-fitting black armor that seemed to actively absorb the light, making it difficult to focus on. Its face was hidden behind a smooth, reflective visor that mirrored the twin suns' glare. It moved with an unnatural, fluid speed and deadly precision, having bypassed the outer sensor grid and electrified fencing with contemptuous ease. It carried a long-barreled, menacing-looking rifle aimed directly at the station dome. "Elite cadre," Kaelith murmured, assessing the threat instantly. "Varn's personal hunters, the Shadow Coil, highly skilled, extremely lethal." The assassin didn't bother with hails, warnings, or demands. A narrow beam of intense, focused energy lanced out silently from the rifle's muzzle, striking the entryway transparency dead center. The reinforced material flared brilliantly, absorbing the initial blast, but hairline stress fractures spiderwebbed instantly across its surface like cracking ice. Another blast immediately followed, wider dispersion this time, impacting the main dome structure itself. The station shuddered violently under the impact. Sparks showered down from an overloaded lighting conduit overhead. Alarms blared louder. "We can't just stay here," Elias yelled over the cacophony of alarms and the groaning protest of the station's structure. "The dome won't hold against sustained fire from a weapon like that." Kaelith nodded grimly, her eyes flashing. "Varn's hunters are relentless, fanatically loyal. They won't stop until they have their objective." She glanced at Elias then, a new, appraising, almost surprised light in her violet eyes as she registered his stance. The way he held his weapon, his calm focus amidst the chaos. "You handle that sidearm like you're more than casually familiar with it, Doctor." There was no time for evasion. No point in maintaining his researcher persona now. The truth, or at least part of it, spilled out, short and clipped. "My background isn't strictly theoretical physics," Elias admitted, firing a carefully aimed suppressive burst towards the assassin, forcing the black-armored figure to duck momentarily behind a large rock outcropping. The shot impacted the rock, sending up sparks and dust. "Before I transferred to the Pure Research Division of the Concord Science Directorate, I was attached to the Applied Sciences Directorate, Special Projects Division." Kaelith's eyebrows rose fractionally, her surprise evident despite the urgency. special projects that Directorate handles, sensitive applications, biomechanical warfare studies, counterinsurgency technology development, resonance weapon prototypes, something like that. Elias confirmed grimly, quickly recalibrating his pistol's energy frequency based on the reflection signature of his own shot off the assassin's armor, analyzing its composition, specialized in non-lethal takedown methodologies and hostile environment neutralization protocols. Years of intensive, classified training he thought he'd deliberately left behind surged to the surface. Tactical assessment, energy weapon proficiency, environmental exploitation, countermeasures. He wasn't just Dr. Carrick, observer of quantum phenomena, anymore. He was also Specialist Carrick, ASD, the resonance field, Elias said suddenly, his eyes flicking to a secondary screen displaying the wildly fluctuating planetary energy readings. It's spiking chaotically near the assassin's position. Reacting to their tech, their hostile intent. Can we use it offensively? Kaelith seemed to grasp his meaning immediately, her sharp mind instantly connecting the dots. Possibly. Theoretically, if we could create a focused, localized overload of the ambient field harmonics, it might disrupt their advanced technology, perhaps even their neural interface systems. It requires precise, rapid modulation through the station's external emitters. Extremely dangerous. High risk of feedback cascade. Less dangerous than that rifle tearing us apart, Elias retorted, ducking instinctively as another energy blast scorched the interior wall beside him, melting metal and filling the air with the smell of burnt polymers. I can try to initiate a focused feedback loop through the station's external resonance emitters. It's within their design parameters, technically. But I need a diversion, a clear window. Can you draw their fire? Keep them pinned? Kaelith gave him a sharp, sudden, predatory smile. It was the first genuine, unrestrained smile he'd seen from her, and it was utterly, terrifyingly beautiful. With considerable pleasure, Specialist Carrick, she said, her voice dropping into a lower, dangerous register. Without another word, she launched herself towards a secondary emergency airlock located on the opposite side of the dome. She moved with incredible, startling speed and agility, a violet blur against the station's stark metallic interior. As she cycled through the airlock, rolling immediately into the minimal cover offered by the swirling dust outside, she unleashed a torrent of concentrated fire from her own elegant weapon. Bright violet energy bolts streaking towards the assassin, deliberately drawing their attention away from Elias and the fractured main entryway. Elias scrambled back to the main console, ignoring the protesting alarms, his fingers flying across the holographic interface with practiced speed. He bypassed safety protocols, rerouting power conduits from non-essential systems, life support buffers, long-range comms, geological sensors, directly to the external resonance emitters arrayed around the dome. He analyzed the assassin's energy signature. The feedback distortion from Kaelith's suppressive fire, the chaotic screaming of the planet's agitated field. He needed to calculate and generate a precise counter frequency. A localized resonance cascade targeted with pinpoint accuracy at the assassin's coordinates. It felt like performing quantum brain surgery with a plasma torch. One miscalculation, one slight tremor in his hand, could overload the station's primary power core, trigger an uncontrolled planetary energy release, or simply fail spectacularly. Sweat beaded on his forehead, dripping onto the cool surface of the console. Outside, the sharp crackle and whine of energy weapons fire intensified. Kaelith was a formidable, graceful fighter, agile and deadly. But the Shadow Coil assassin was clearly well-equipped, highly trained, and brutally relentless. He found the harmonic frequency node he needed, isolated the target coordinates locking onto the assassin's energy signature, and initiated the cascade sequence programming. Kaelith, clear the target zone. Now, he yelled into the internal comm bead clipped to his collar. A clipped acknowledgement crackled back just as he slammed his hand down flat on the activation command icon. The entire station groaned under the sudden, massive power drain, lights flickering violently, threatening to extinguish. Outside, the very air around the assassin seemed to warp, ripple, and visibly solidify for an instant. A high-pitched, bone-jarring whine filled the air, resonating deep within Elias's teeth and skull. The assassins staggered, dropping their rifle, clutching at their helmet as if in sudden agony. The figure's advanced camouflage tech flickered erratically and died completely, revealing intricate, disturbing patterns etched into the matte black armor plating beneath. The focused resonance wave hit then, not as a destructive blast, but as a disorienting, disabling neurophysical force. The assassin crumpled bonelessly to the dusty ground, motionless, their weapon clattering onto the ochre earth a meter away. An abrupt, profound silence fell, broken only by the mournful howl of the Virelian wind and the station's slowly receding emergency alarms. Elias slumped against the console, breathing heavily, the adrenaline dump leaving his hands trembling slightly. Kaelith reappeared silently at the main entryway, dusty and breathing hard but apparently unharmed, her weapon held at the ready. She surveyed the scene outside, the deactivated assassin, the discarded rifle, then looked back at Elias, her expression an unreadable mixture of surprise, calculation, and newfound respect. Effective. Doctor, she conceded, her voice regaining its composure. Your applied sciences background appears substantial. He pushed himself upright, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. Just applying fundamental physics principles under pressure, he deflected automatically, though the tremor in his hands betrayed the adrenaline surge and the residual fear. He walked cautiously towards the fractured entryway, Kaelith moving smoothly to cover him from behind. The assassin remained unconscious, unmoving. We need to secure them, Elias said, his tactical training overlaying his scientific curiosity. Find out who they really are, what they know, how they tracked us. As Kaelith moved efficiently to disarm and bind the fallen hunter with energy cuffs produced from her armor, Elias knelt beside the unconscious figure, cautiously examining the sophisticated black armor. The design was sleek, menacing, likely incorporating direct neural interface technology, which would explain its vulnerability to the targeted resonance cascade. His eyes fell on a specific insignia etched onto the shoulder plate, a stylized, segmented serpent coiled tightly around a fractured, five-pointed star. Sarn Leora, Kaelith breathed, recognizing it instantly, her voice hardening with hatred and resolve. Varn's personal guard emblem. The shadow coil. Elias looked up at her, meeting her intense violet gaze. The immediate danger was neutralized, but the larger threat loomed closer than ever. The time for secrets, for guardedness, was over. Their survival, Nyra's survival, depended on truth now. You need to tell me everything, Kaelith, he said firmly, his voice quiet but insistent. Who you really are. Why Regent Varn wants Nyra so badly. What is she carrying? What makes her so important that he sends elite assassins across the galaxy? Kaelith met his gaze, the immense weight of her hidden life, her exile, settling visibly upon her regal shoulders. She glanced towards Nyra, who had crept out cautiously from her hiding place, and now stood watching them both, her luminous violet eyes wide with apprehension and a dawning, fearful understanding. Kaelith sighed, a sound heavy with centuries of history, loss, and weariness. "Very well, Elias," she said, her voice quiet but resolute, tinged with sorrow. "It seems our temporary arrangement requires a more solid foundation of truth if we are to survive." She drew herself up, the queen asserting herself through the fugitive. "I am Kaelith Morales Vandrin, the exiled queen of the Sarn Leora system, and my daughter. Nyra, she carries the Salkyra." She paused, letting the alien term hang in the air before translating, her voice dropping almost to a whisper. "In your language, Terran, you might call it the hardcore." The revelation hung heavy and dangerous in the suddenly still air of the damaged station, fundamentally, irrevocably changing the nature of their reluctant, legally enforced alliance. The planet's ambient energy field seemed to settle around them, humming with the profound weight of revealed truth, binding them together now not just by ancient law and shared circumstance, but by shared danger, cosmic stakes, and unfolding destiny. The captured Shadow Coil assassin, stripped of their formidable armor and weapons, remained unconscious under mild chemical sedation in a makeshift holding cell Elias had rapidly configured from a reinforced storage module, monitored by internal sensors. Kaelith paced the main lab area like a caged predator, her regal bearing momentarily overshadowed by a raw vulnerability, a deep grief Elias hadn't witnessed before. Nyra sat quietly on her sleeping pallet, watching her mother with wide, solemn, unnervingly perceptive eyes, seemingly absorbing the charged atmosphere. The weight of Kaelith's revelation, exiled queen, a ruthless usurper named Varn, a mysterious, powerful living artifact called the heart core carried within her daughter, settled heavily in the confined, damaged space, thickening the air. Sarn Leora was beautiful. Kaelith began, her voice distant, soft, tinged with a profound nostalgia and sharp, unhealed pain. She spoke of cities built from light and harmony, structures that sang with energy drawn directly from the planet's core, powered and interconnected by precisely tuned resonance grids. Our civilization was built on principles of resonance harmony, sustainable energy integration, and peaceful coexistence. We were scholars, artists, engineers of energy, largely keeping to ourselves, content within our system. She paused, tracing unseen patterns on the metallic floor panel with the toe of her boot. The air filled with the faint scent of ozone from the earlier battle. My consort, Nyra's father, Terrell, he was a visionary scientist, Elias, much like you in his dedication and brilliance, though his specific field was geo-resonant macro-engineering. He believed we could extend our planet's intrinsic harmony, develop technologies to stabilize other nascent planetary systems, perhaps even heal worlds damaged by conflict or natural disaster. Her voice hardened, bitterness creeping in, chasing away the soft nostalgia. Regent Varn was his chief advisor, his protege, trusted implicitly, respected by all. Her hand clenched into a fist at her side. Varn coveted power, not harmony. He saw the potential for control, for absolute authority, for weaponizing the very energies Terrell sought to use for healing. He orchestrated my consort's death. Her voice broke slightly, raw grief surfacing for a moment before being ruthlessly suppressed. A carefully staged laboratory accident, and then he seized control in the ensuing chaos and grief, twisting narratives, sowing discord. He declared himself regent, claiming I was unfit to rule, too lost in sorrow, too unstable to lead. Elias listened intently, the pieces falling into place, forming a grim mosaic of political intrigue, betrayal, and lost idealism. "And you were exiled," he prompted gently. forced to flee for our lives. Kaelith corrected sharply, bitterness lacing her tone like poison. With Nyra barely an infant then, Varn knew my daughter was the key, the ultimate prize. The Salkyra, the hardcore, it is not merely an object. Elias, not a piece of technology you can simply install or remove. It is a living artifact, symbiotic, ancient, passed down through the royal bloodline of Sarn Leora for millennia, intrinsically bonded to the designated heir at birth. It resonates directly with planetary core energies, capable of amplifying and stabilizing them across vast interstellar distances, creating harmony, fostering life. Her voice dropped, becoming hushed, laden with dread, or destabilizing them catastrophically if wielded improperly, forcefully, or with malicious intent. It could shatter worlds. Elias, extinguish stars. Nyra carries this inside her, Elias asked, glancing towards the small girl who was now watching him intently, her violet eyes reflecting the flashing console lights. He tried to comprehend the immense, terrifying burden she unknowingly, innocently bore within her small frame. Kaelith nodded grimly, her expression taut with fear and fierce maternal protectiveness. It is dormant now, shielded by her own innate life force, her innocence. It cannot be easily detected or accessed without her willing participation. Or, she added darkly, extreme non-invasive life-threatening measures. Varn hunts us not just to eliminate the legitimate heir to the throne he usurped, but primarily to claim the hardcore. He believes, in his arrogance, that he can forcibly extract it, control its immense power through artificial means. He would shatter worlds, enslave systems. Commit any atrocity to solidify his reign and become a god among the stars. She stopped pacing abruptly and faced Elias directly, her eyes blazing with intensity. The crash here on Virelia, it wasn't an accident. Varn's forces, alerted to our trajectory, ambushed our transport near this system's periphery. They damaged our primary systems, crippled our FTL drive, forcing us down into the gravity well. I managed to get Nyra into the single functioning escape pod just moments before the final impact that destroyed the ship and killed my loyal crew. Understanding dawned on Elias, cold and stark. Kaelith hadn't simply arrived to reclaim her daughter after detecting a distress signal. She likely believed Nyra lost, dead in the crash, until her ship's sensitive long-range scanners detected the faint, anomalous Sarn Leoran life signature emanating from his Concord research station. Her initial coldness, her rigid formality. It wasn't lack of love or maternal feeling. It was the profound shock, the disbelief, the overwhelming fear and desperate hope of a hunted, grieving queen discovering her lost child miraculously alive, but in the hands of an unknown alien on a restricted world. Her desperate need for asylum, the bizarre, legally mandated fake marriage, it was all a desperate, improvised strategy, born of terror and necessity, to protect Nyra and the devastating power she carried, hidden in plain sight. Why Virelia 9, specifically? Elias asked, the scientific questions surfacing through the political and personal turmoil. You said your transport was ambushed near here. Was coming here intentional or just chance? Virelia is unique, Kaelith reiterated, her voice regaining some of its earlier certainty. Its energy field is ancient, powerful, and possesses resonance frequencies strangely compatible with the heart core's fundamental harmonics. Old Sarn Leoran legends, fragments of texts saved from Varn's purges, spoke of Virelia as a potential sanctuary, a place where the core could be attuned, stabilized, perhaps even safely awakened, but only under very specific, complex conditions involving the planet's field and, she hesitated, choosing her words carefully. The presence of attuned guardians. She paused, looking distinctly uncomfortable. The legends, the prophecies surrounding the core, specifically mention that its full potential, its ability to truly harmonize and heal planetary systems on a galactic scale, can only be unlocked, safely channeled, through a resonant bond, a true emotional, biological, and psychic connection between Nyra's designated protectors. Traditionally, her parents. Elias stared at her, the implications hitting him with the force of a physical shockwave. Her parents. But, you said Nyra's father is dead. Kaelith finished softly, the single word heavy with loss. Murdered by Varn, which, according to the ancient prophecies surrounding the core and, apparently, the foundational laws governing this specific place, created a vacancy, a crucial role left unfilled. She looked directly at him then, her luminous violet eyes holding a complex, almost overwhelming mix of fatalism, desperation, and a burgeoning, hesitant hope he wasn't sure how to interpret. When you sheltered Nyra Elias, when you acted out of pure compassion and offered her protection, you didn't just inadvertently become her legal guardian under the Virelian edict. You unknowingly, randomly, stepped into the subpotential role of the second protector required by prophecy and planetary law for the core's full, safe activation. Our union, mandated by that ancient law you triggered, created the necessary legal and resonant framework. The planet, its sentient field, it recognized the potential configuration. I'd responded. It was staggering, utterly, mind-bendingly staggering. Ancient prophecies, living symbiotic artifacts, quantum planetary resonance, interstellar law, and galactic politics, all converging violently on his small, isolated research station, all centered around a desperate, fake marriage that was apparently cosmically significant, witnessed and recorded by the planet itself. His scientific mind, trained in empirical evidence and logical deduction, struggled violently to reconcile the mystical, prophetic elements with the tangible, measurable physics he was observing daily. Yet, the evidence was undeniably, frustratingly there. The planet was responding to them, to their legally mandated bond, however artificial its inception had felt. The impossible flowers blooming outside in the sterile dust, the dramatic shifts in atmospheric energy correlating with their emotions, the successful defeat of the highly advanced assassin through resonance manipulation, it all pointed insistently towards a deeper, stranger reality operating just beneath the surface of his understanding. So, this bond, Elias said slowly, carefully, trying to grasp the enormity of it, the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. The one the edict created between us, it needs to become real, genuine, for the heart core to function properly, to be awakened safely. The legends speak explicitly of a true bond, Kaelith confirmed, her voice barely a whisper now. Authentic emotional resonance, shared purpose, mutual trust. Respect and affection. The affirmation ceremony we performed before the conduit satisfied the external legal structure, creating the necessary conduit, the framework. But the actual energy required to awaken the Salkyra's full potential, to stabilize it, to channel its power safely, that must stem from something genuine between the protectors. She looked away then, unable to meet his gaze, a faint flush rising on her violet cheeks, a startling sign of vulnerability, something freely chosen, not compelled by law or necessity. The air in the damaged station crackled with unspoken possibilities, with the immense weight of potential futures resting on the fragile, nascent connection between them. Their arrangement, born of desperation, legal absurdity, and necessity, now held the potential key to saving not just Sarn Leora, but potentially countless worlds, predicated entirely on the development of genuine, heartfelt feelings between two individuals from different stars, different species, thrown together by fate, violence, and ancient planetary law. The shared danger, the forced proximity, the mutual, fierce goal of protecting Nyra, it was forging something between them, an undeniable connection, a growing awareness that went far beyond legal obligation or shared guardianship. He saw Kaelith now, not just as an exiled queen or a formidable warrior, but as a grieving widow, a desperate mother fighting for her child's life, a leader mourning her lost world, a woman carrying immense, crushing burdens with quiet, steely dignity. And perhaps, just perhaps, she was beginning to see him as more than just a convenient human scientist, a legal loophole, a temporary necessity. Varn won't stop, Elias said, breaking the charged, heavy silence, pulling them back to the immediate, lethal reality. He sent one elite hunter. He'll analyze its failure, adapt, and send more, likely sooner rather than later. We can't just stay here passively and wait for the next attack. Kaelith nodded, her resolve returning instantly. The queen eclipsing the vulnerable woman. No, absolutely not. We need to understand the core better, understand Virelia's field more deeply, and understand precisely how our bond influences them both. She looked thoughtful. The ancient Sarn Leoran texts, the fragments I saved, mention resonance priests, ancient custodians of Virelia's secrets, individuals deeply attuned to the planet's deeper energy currents, living in seclusion for centuries. Perhaps they still exist. Perhaps they can offer guidance, knowledge we desperately need. Resonance priests. Elias raised an eyebrow, skepticism warring with the undeniable weirdness of his current reality. More ancient mysticism, or perhaps, Kaelith countered gently, a hint of challenge in her tone, ancient science, expressed through a different cultural, more intuitive lens. Their understanding of this planet's unique energy field, passed down through generations, may far exceed our own contemporary methods. If we are to truly understand the Salkyra's potential, if we are to have any hope of standing against Varn and his forces, we need knowledge. We need guidance beyond what my fragmented texts can offer. It was another leap of faith, moving further away from the hard science and tactical defense he understood, deeper into the unfamiliar territory of planetary priests, ancient legends, and sentient energy fields. But their situation was already so far beyond the conventional, the rational, that seeking unconventional help seemed almost logical now. Elias looked at Nyra, who had drifted off to sleep on her pallet, her small face peaceful in the dim light, utterly oblivious to the cosmic weight resting upon her small existence. He looked back at Kaelith, her regal beauty illuminated by the soft glow of the functioning console lights, her expression a mixture of fierce determination and quiet, fragile hope. Their temporary, fake, legally mandated marriage had somehow become the focal point of an interstellar conflict, the potential catalyst for activating a power that could reshape galaxies. And it all apparently depended on whether their forced connection could somehow blossom into something real, something resonant, something true. The path forward was terrifyingly uncertain, fraught with danger, unknowns, and the distinct possibility of utter failure. But for the first time since Kaelith's ship had descended from the Virelian sky, Elias felt a glimmer of something beyond mere survival, beyond reactive defense. He felt purpose, a direction. "All right," he said, meeting her gaze, making a conscious choice. All right, Kaelith, let's go find your resonance priests. Their search for the elusive resonance priests began, ironically, with the captured Shadow Coil assassins' confiscated datapad. After Kaelith, with some reluctant but crucial assistance from Elias's specialized technical skills in bypassing sophisticated encryption, skills he hadn't used in years, managed to crack its formidable security layers. They discovered fragmented navigational logs and heavily coded intelligence reports. The picture that emerged was chilling. Varn wasn't just hunting Kaelith and Nyra. He was actively, aggressively searching for something specific on Virelia 9 itself, something related to the planet's unique energy field, described cryptically in the logs as a potential amplification matrix or primary resonance nexus. Varn sought to control not just the power of the hardcore, but Virelia's unique planetary energy as well, potentially turning the entire world into a massive resonance weapon under his command. Among the corrupted, partially deleted data files were detailed planetary survey maps, far more granular and accurate than the standard Concord charts Elias possessed. These maps highlighted several anomalous regions of unusually high, stable energy concentration, deep within Virelia's largely unexplored and treacherous southern mountain ranges. One specific region, marked with ancient Sarn-Leoran glyphs that Kaelith painstakingly translated as meaning roughly place of deep echoes or the planet's heartbeat, seemed the most likely candidate for the priest's hidden sanctuary. Preparing for the overland journey required a careful pooling of their disparate resources and complementary skills. Elias worked tirelessly modifying the rugged surface rover, reinforcing its shielding against potential extreme energy fluctuations and integrating Kaelith's more advanced, compact sensor technology, scavenged from the captured assassin's sophisticated equipment. Kaelith, drawing upon her deep knowledge of classical Virelian geography, gleaned from ancient Sarn-Leoran historical texts, and star charts passed down through her lineage, plotted a potential course through the treacherous mountain passes, meticulously calculating routes to avoid known geological instabilities, magnetic anomalies, and suspected high-energy zones that could disable the rover. Nyra surprisingly proved instrumental in this phase, often, while studying the holographic map projected in the station. She would point with unerring accuracy towards specific canyons or plateaus, humming softly, a low, resonant sound, as if intuitively sensing the safest or most direct path through the planet's complex energy currents. They packed essential supplies, concentrated rations, water purification, tablets, advanced medical equipment, spare power cells, and defensive gear, including both energy weapons and Elias's non-lethal sonic stunners. They left the research station on fully automated monitoring, hoping its reinforced structure and lockdown protocols would deter casual investigation or further attacks, programming it to send a tightly encrypted distress call to Kaelith's ship if its perimeter was breached again. The captured assassin remained sedated and secured in the holding module, a dangerous problem deferred, to be dealt with upon their uncertain return. The journey south was arduous, testing the limits of both the rover and its occupants. The vehicle navigated towering, claustrophobic canyons carved by ancient, long-vanished rivers, climbed steep slopes littered with razor-sharp crystalline formations that threatened to shred the rover's tires, and traversed high, windswept plateaus where the twin suns beat down with ferocious, unfiltered intensity. The heat radiating off the rocks in shimmering waves, the landscape grew progressively stranger, more alien, the further south they traveled. The rocks themselves seemed to pulse with faint, internal light in the dimmer twilight hours between the setting of one sun and the rising of the other. The air vibrated constantly with palpable energy, the planet's core resonance field undeniably stronger here, wilder, less modulated, almost raw compared to the area around the station. This heightened energy field significantly affected their technology, causing occasional sensor glitches, communication static, and unsettling fluctuations in the rover's power core readings. Elias felt it as a constant, low-level pressure behind his eyes, a persistent hum vibrating deep within his bones, sometimes causing mild nausea or disorientation. Kaelith seemed less physically affected, more attuned, often closing her eyes for long periods, as if listening intently to something Elias couldn't perceive. Her expression serene yet focused. Nyra, paradoxically, often fell into deep, peaceful sleeps during the roughest parts of the journey, curled up on the passenger seat, seemingly drawing comfort, sustenance, and energy directly from the heightened planetary resonance that Elias found so taxing. During the long hours spent confined within the rover's cramped cabin, the enforced proximity, the shared tasks of navigation and survival, continued to chip away relentlessly at the remaining barriers between Elias and Kaelith. They discussed science, comparing Elias's empirically driven quantum physics perspective with Kaelith's more intuitive, holistic, ancestrally derived understanding of resonance fields and energy harmonics. They found surprising common ground, their different approaches often complementing each other. Kaelith spoke more freely now of Sarn Leora, sharing bittersweet memories of her lost home before Varn's coup, her voice softening, losing its regal edge as she described the beauty of its singing cities, the harmony of its society, the brilliance of her lost consort. Elias, in turn, found himself opening up unexpectedly about his own past. The disillusionment with the Concord's often ethically questionable militaristic applications of advanced science that had ultimately driven him to seek refuge, anonymity, and purpose in pure research on this remote, forgotten outpost. They discovered shared core values beneath the surface differences, a profound respect for knowledge, a deep yearning for peace and stability, and a fierce, unwavering protectiveness towards Nyra, who had become the quiet center of their unlikely universe. Moments of unexpected levity occasionally broke through the ever-present tension, Nyra attempting to mimic the rover's complex engine sounds with remarkable accuracy, Kaelith's dry, understated wit surfacing in response to one of Elias's technical frustrations, Elias fumbling hilariously with preparing alien nutrient paste rations, much to Nyra's giggling amusement. A quiet, unspoken camaraderie, a comfortable familiarity, grew steadily between them, underscored by the constant hum of the living planet beneath their wheels and the shared danger they faced together. One evening, camped within a network of sheltered caves where strange, bioluminescent fungi cast an ethereal, shifting blue glow on the rock walls, Kaelith was tending to a minor plasma burn Elias had sustained while hastily repairing a sparking power conduit on the rover's exterior. The air in the cave was cool, smelling of damp earth and ozone. Her touch, as she applied a soothing, iridescent alien salve from her medkit, was unexpectedly gentle, precise, yet careful. "You are surprisingly adaptable, Dr. Carrick," she murmured, her voice soft in the quiet cave, the blue light reflecting in her violet irises as she focused on his injury. For a theoretical physicist primarily concerned with abstract equations, just Elias. "Please," he corrected gently, meeting her gaze. The proximity, the shared quiet, the strange blue light intensified the connection he felt growing between them. "And you're considerably more than just a fugitive queen." Kaelith, their eyes held for a long moment, the subtle energy field within the cave seeming to pulse in response, amplifying the unspoken current flowing between them. The air thickened perceptibly, the background hum intensifying slightly. They leaned closer, almost imperceptibly, drawn by an invisible force, a shared recognition. A sharp, terrified cry from Nyra shattered the spell instantly. She sat bolt upright on her sleeping mat across the cave, her large eyes wide with primal fear, glowing with an intense, unnatural brightness in the dim blue light. "They're close," she whispered, her small voice trembling, strained. "The shadows, the cold ones, they're searching, feeling for us." Instantly, the fragile moment vanished, replaced by cold adrenaline. Kaelith and Elias were on their feet, weapons materialized in their hands as if by instinct. Kaelith swiftly accessed the rover's enhanced sensor array, linked to her wrist device. "Multiple energy signatures inbound," she reported grimly, her voice regaining its sharp tactical edge. "Cloaked aerial drones deploying ground units, bearing down on our position. Varn's forces. They tracked us somehow." "How?" Elias hissed, moving towards the cave entrance, peering cautiously into the moonlit canyon outside. "We disabled the assassin's primary tracker. The rover is shielded, perhaps a secondary, deeply embedded subcutaneous tracker we missed during the initial scan." Kaelith speculated rapidly, her mind racing through possibilities. Or perhaps Nyra's presence. The Salkyra within her acts as an unintended beacon in this area of extremely high resonance, amplifying her signature. Sounds echoed from the canyon outside, the distinct crunch of multiple armored boots on loose gravel. Low, guttural commands barked in an alien tongue Elias didn't recognize. Flares briefly illuminated the canyon walls. They were being systematically surrounded. "We can't fight them all," Elias assessed quickly, his tactical mind overriding his fear. "Not trapped in here. They have aerial support. There." Kaelith pointed urgently towards the deeper recesses of the cave network, where the strange blue fungal light seemed brighter, converging on a narrow, dark fissure in the rock face at the back of the main cavern. "The resonance readings are exponentially higher back there. The priests, the place of deep echoes. If they exist, they will be deeper within. Through there." It was their only conceivable chance, a desperate gamble, grabbing Nyra, who was now trembling but silent, and their essential gear packs. They plunged into the narrow fissure, Elias using his sidearm's integrated tactical light to illuminate the treacherous, uneven path. The tunnel twisted sharply downwards, the air growing noticeably warmer, damper. The pervasive resonance hum becoming an almost physical pressure against their eardrums, vibrating through their bodies. Behind them, echoing ominously up the narrow passage, they could clearly hear the sounds of determined pursuit, the heavy clang of armored feet scrambling over rock, the sharp discharge of energy weapons impacting the stone walls of the tunnel entrance. The fissure suddenly opened out dramatically into a vast, breathtaking cavern, lit softly by pulsing seams of glowing minerals embedded like veins within the dark rock walls. In the center of the immense cavern stood a circle of towering monolithic stones, similar in material to the resonance conduit where they had held the affirmation ceremony near the station, but far larger, far older, humming audibly with immense, contained power, and waiting for them, standing calmly, serenely within the circle of humming stones, were three figures. They were clad in simple, earth-toned, hand-woven robes, their faces deeply lined and ancient, weathered like the surrounding rock, their eyes radiating a profound, almost unsettling serenity and wisdom. They showed absolutely no surprise at the sudden appearance of Kaelith, Elias, and Nyra, nor at the clamoring sounds of pursuit echoing from the tunnel behind them. They simply watched them approach. Patient as mountains, they were, undoubtedly, the resonance priests of Virelia. Welcome, bearers of the bond, child of the core, the eldest of the three priests said, his voice like the slow grinding of ancient stones, deep and resonant, yet carrying clearly above the powerful hum of the monoliths. His eyes, startlingly pale blue, held millennia of knowledge. We have awaited your arrival. He raised a thin, gnarled hand, not towards Elias and Kaelith, but towards the tunnel entrance they had just emerged from. Just as the first wave of Varn's black-armored soldiers burst into the cavern, weapons raised and targeting sensors locking on, they stopped dead in their tracks, their forward momentum freezing instantly as if they had run into an invisible wall. Their movements became sluggish, then ceased altogether, frozen mid-stride like statues, a shimmering, almost invisible wall of pure, solidified resonance energy, emanating from the circle of stones, now sealed the tunnel entrance completely, trapping Varn's forces just outside the sacred circle, confused and immobilized. Elias stared, utterly astonished by the effortless, silent display of immense power. It defied known physics. Kaelith, however, bowed her head deeply, a gesture of profound respect. Elders of Virelia, we seek sanctuary and guidance. The eldest priest nodded slowly, his ancient gaze drifting from Kaelith's bowed head to Elias's stunned face, then lingering gently on Nyra, who watched the priests not with fear, but with wide-eyed, calm curiosity, her head tilted slightly. Sanctuary is granted within this hallowed space. Guidance. That requires understanding. The path you walk, strangers and daughter of Sarn Leora, is dictated by resonance, by destiny interwoven with the energy currents, and ultimately, by a conscious choice. He looked directly, penetratingly, at Elias then. The Edict of Shelter bound you by planetary law. Human. An ancient accord recognized your act, but the planet also recognized your potential, your latent, unrealized connection to its deepest energy field, a connection buried deep within your own maternal lineage, unknown even to you until this moment. My lineage, Elias asked, completely bewildered. I'm from Earth. Standard Terran genome. My family were engineers, academics, teachers for generations. Generations ago, another priest interjected smoothly, a female with eyes as dark and sharp as chips of obsidian. Her voice was softer, yet equally resonant. Your distant ancestors were explorers, spacefarers in the early days of Terran expansion. Their vessel brushed against systems touched by ancient Sarn Leoran influence, by primitive resonance technology experiments abandoned long ago. A subtle genetic marker was imprinted, a dormant sequence attuned to fields like Virelia's unique harmonic signature. It lay dormant for centuries, passed down unseen, until you arrived here, on this specific resonant world, until you performed an act of selfless protection towards an attuned child, resonating powerfully with the ancient edict. You are not merely an outsider caught in events, Elias Carrick. You are, perhaps, an unexpected, unforeseen fulfillment of an ancient cosmic design. The revelation was stunning, world-shifting. His presence here, his inexplicable affinity for the resonance field, which he'd dismissed as mere scientific aptitude or sensitivity, wasn't just coincidence or training. It was an inherited trait, a dormant potential awakened by circumstance, compassion, and Virelian planetary law, it explained. Perhaps the unsettling sense of vague familiarity he sometimes felt looking at the Sarn-Leoran symbols. The intuitive leaps in understanding resonance principles his logical mind couldn't fully account for. The Salkyra, the heart core, slumbers fitfully within the child. The third priest stated abruptly. He was gaunt, ascetic, his eyes burning with an intense inner fire. The usurper Varn seeks to exploit its power, to twist its harmony into a weapon of control. Its safe awakening, its attunement for healing, requires the manifestation of the true bond between the designated protectors. The edict provided the vessel, the legal framework, the initial connection, but only genuine, reciprocal emotional resonance, freely given, can fill that vessel and ignite the core's light. We understand that now, Kaelith said, her voice firm, her earlier vulnerability replaced by regal determination. We felt it during the affirmation. But how? How do we consciously forge this true bond? How do we prepare Nyra? How do we protect the core from Varn? The eldest priest gestured with his gnarled hand towards the central monolith within the circle, which pulsed gently with a warm, rhythmic, inviting light. To solidify the bond, to understand its potential and your path forward, you must undergo the rite of attunement. Together, the three of you. His gaze swept over them. You will willingly enter the planet's deepest resonance stream, confront your own deepest fears, your lingering doubts, your hidden truths, your unspoken desires. You must see each other, truly see each other, stripped bare of titles, secrets, and self-deception. Only then can the true bond solidify, becoming an unshakable foundation. Only then can you fully understand the potential you hold together and the path forward to safeguarding the core. He looked at them both intently, his ancient pale blue eyes seeming to pierce through flesh and bone to the soul beneath. It is not without significant risk. The raw resonance stream can shatter minds unprepared for its unfiltered truth, its intensity. Are you willing to face yourselves and each other so completely? Elias looked at Kaelith. Her expression was resolute, unwavering. Any fear she felt overshadowed by fierce determination. She gave him a single, almost imperceptible nod. This was it, the culmination of their strange, forced alliance. The potential forging of something truly real, something powerful, guided by ancient, mystical priests in a cavern, humming with raw planetary power, while lethal enemies waited just beyond a shimmering wall of impossible energy. He thought of Nyra, innocent and trusting, carrying the weight of worlds within her. He thought of the future Varn represented, tyranny, destruction, disharmony. He thought of the potential peace and healing the heart core promised. His ingrained scientific skepticism battled fiercely against the undeniable, overwhelming reality of his current situation, the now confirmed truth of his own unexpected, inherited connection to this place, this energy. He met Kaelith's intense violet gaze again, a silent, profound understanding passing between them in that instant. A shared purpose, a shared risk, a shared hope. We are, Elias said, his voice firm, clear, echoing slightly in the vast cavern. Together, Kaelith's hand finding his, their fingers interlacing naturally this time, with Nyra held protectively, trustingly between them. They stepped forward towards the pulsing central monolith, ready to face the rite of attunement and the uncertain, transformative destiny it promised. The deep resonance hum swelled dramatically around them, enveloping them completely in warm light and complex, layered sound, pulling them gently but inexorably into the planet's deepest, most ancient currents of consciousness and energy. Stepping fully into the circle of monoliths felt like diving headfirst into a warm, turbulent ocean of pure, sentient energy. The air grew thick, heavy, vibrating not just around them, but within them, resonating with bone marrow, nerve endings, the very fabric of their consciousness. The light emanating from the central stone intensified, becoming almost blinding, washing over Elias, Kaelith, and Nyra, dissolving the solid reality of the cavern around them into swirling, abstract patterns of incandescent color and complex, interwoven sound. Elias felt Kaelith's hand tighten instinctively in his, a grounding anchor in the disorientation, while Nyra pressed close against his side, radiating a sense of calm curiosity rather than fear. Then, the external world vanished completely, replaced by an immersive, overwhelming flow of raw sensation, shared memory, and fragmented, deeply personal imagery. They were in the resonance stream, the planet's living consciousness. It wasn't a physical place, but a state of profoundly heightened perception, a direct, unfiltered interface with the ancient, collective consciousness of Virelia itself, and, through it, the interconnectedness of their own minds, hearts, and histories. Elias experienced flashes of Kaelith's life, not as disjointed images, but as lived moments felt with her own emotional intensity, her solemn coronation on Sarn Leora. Radiant with youthful hope and idealism, the quiet, overwhelming joy of Nyra's birth, the warmth of her consort Terrell's hand in hers, the chilling, shattering moment of Terrell's reported death, the sickeningly false grief etched on Varn's face as he delivered the news, the desperate, terrifying flight through hostile star systems, hunted, betrayed, afraid. He felt the searing intensity of her fierce, primal love for Nyra, a love that anchored her through despair. He felt the crushing weight of her royal responsibility, her deep-seated fear of failure, of letting her people down, of Varn capturing Nyra. He felt the guarded, hesitant hope she was slowly, cautiously, beginning to extend towards him, towards this impossible situation. There were no secrets here, no regal facade, no guarded walls, only the raw, unvarnished truth of her experiences, her sacrifices, her fears, and her resilient spirit laid bare. Simultaneously, almost overwhelmingly, he felt his own life unfolding, exposed for her to see, to feel, his solitary childhood fascination with the distant stars. Looking up from polluted Earth's skies, his unwavering dedication to the elegant purity of science, the creeping moral compromises, and growing disillusionment during his time within the Concord's Special Projects Division, developing technologies with terrifying destructive potential, his subsequent retreat into the deliberate isolation of pure research on this remote outpost, seeking refuge from complexity, the profound, aching loneliness he hadn't fully acknowledged even to himself until Nyra's sudden, disruptive arrival, the unexpected, fierce surge of protectiveness he felt for the small alien child, the confusing, conflicting mix of duty, attraction, respect, and fear he felt towards Kaelith, the exiled queen bound to him by ancient law, his skepticism, his pragmatism, his analytical detachment, his deeply buried longing for genuine connection, all were exposed, raw and vulnerable, in the stream's cleansing, revealing currents. They saw, felt, and understood each other's deepest fears with stark clarity. Kaelith's recurring nightmare of Varn capturing Nyra, forcibly extracting the Salkyra, twisting its power, plunging Sarn Leora and potentially the galaxy into darkness. Elias's ingrained fear of intimacy, of emotional vulnerability, of repeating past mistakes where his scientific contributions had led to unintended, horrific harm. The fear of being fundamentally inadequate for the cosmic role unexpectedly thrust upon him, but powerfully intertwined with the fears. They perceived each other's shared strengths, resilience forged in adversity, sharp intelligence, unwavering loyalty once given, and a growing, undeniable, deeply resonant affection blooming between them. They saw Nyra not just as a vulnerable child or a living vessel for immense power, but as the bright, innocent focal point of their shared purpose, the catalyst for their unlikely bond, the living embodiment of hope. Images of her infectious laughter echoing in the station, her unwavering trust in both of them, her innate, harmonious connection to Virelia's energy field flowed between them, washing away doubts, strengthening their shared resolve. The resonance stream wasn't a passive viewing gallery. It actively tested them, challenged them. Illusions formed from their deepest anxieties coalesced out of the swirling energy. Varn's triumphant, gloating face looming large, stern Concord officials, condemning Elias for his violations, stripping him of his credentials, Nyra crying out in pain, lost in darkness. They had to consciously, deliberately push through these phantoms, anchoring themselves firmly to the shared truth of their experiences, their growing mutual trust, the reality of the connection they felt solidifying between them. Elias felt Kaelith's mental presence beside him, a steady beacon of strength, her innate regal discipline and resilience providing a bulwark against the psychic turbulence, a calm center in the storm. He, in turn, offered his analytical calm, his ability to perceive patterns within the chaos, helping her navigate the disorienting flood of raw data, shared memory, and overwhelming emotion. They learned, rapidly, instinctively, to lean on each other, not just physically holding hands, but mentally, emotionally, supporting each other within the intense, transformative crucible of the resonance stream. Slowly, gradually, a new, profound awareness dawned within the swirling light and sound. The bond, initially imposed by ancient law and desperate circumstance, began to fundamentally transform, to deepen, to ignite. It wasn't just legal obligation or shared guardianship or pragmatic necessity anymore. It was deep, empathetic understanding. It was mutual respect forged in shared trials. It was the quiet acceptance born from seeing each other's deepest flaws and vulnerabilities and choosing connection anyway. It was the tentative, hesitant blossoming of affection and attraction into something deeper, stronger, truer, forged in shared adversity, witnessed by a living planet, and grounded in resonant truth. The very energy flowing between them shifted subtly, harmonizing, strengthening, amplifying the natural resonance they shared intrinsically with Nyra and with the planet Virelia itself. And then, together, they felt the Salkyra, the hardcore, not as an abstract concept or a dangerous burden, but as a warm, incredibly potent, living presence dwelling peacefully within Nyra, connected intrinsically, harmoniously. To both of them now through the solidified true bond, it pulsed gently, steadily, in perfect time with the planet's deep, rhythmic heartbeat, a beacon of immense, untapped potential energy, awaiting the final catalyst. The conscious choice for its awakening. It showed them fleeting, powerful visions of possible futures, Sarn Leora healed, vibrant, its cities singing with restored harmony, Virelia 9 itself blossoming into a verdant garden world under the core's influence. Other damaged or disharmonious star systems brought slowly back into balance across the galaxy. But it also showed them, with chilling clarity. The potential devastation Varn could unleash if he gained control. Worlds fractured. Stars extinguished. Silence falling across vibrant systems. The choice, the immense responsibility, was undeniably, irrevocably theirs. As the visions of potential futures faded, the overwhelming intensity of the resonance stream began to gently ebb. The swirling colors and sounds gradually coalesced back into the familiar shapes and textures of the vast cavern. The humming monolithic stones, the three ancient, waiting priests, the shimmering energy barriers sealing the tunnel entrance, still held Varn's immobilized soldiers firmly at bay. Elias and Kaelith looked at each other, truly seeing one another, perhaps for the very first time, stripped bare of pretense and necessity. The guardedness, the skepticism, the fear, it was gone, replaced by a profound, quiet understanding, a deep sense of connection, and a shared, unwavering sense of purpose. The true bond between them felt tangible now, a warm, steady, comforting current flowing, not just between them, but connecting them deeply, fundamentally, to Nyra and to the living heart of the planet itself. Kaelith offered him a small, genuine, radiant smile, her violet eyes shining with unshed tears and a newfound, unshakable strength. Elias returned it, feeling a sense of clarity, purpose, and belonging settle over him unlike anything he had ever known in his solitary life. You have faced the stream. You have faced yourselves. You have emerged united, the eldest priest intoned, his deep voice filled with solemn approval. The bond is true. Forged not by law alone, nor fleeting circumstance, but by shared experience, chosen acceptance, and resonant hearts. What now? Kaelith asked, her voice steady, imbued with a quiet, renewed authority. The true queen of Sarn Leora speaking. How do we stop Varn? How do we protect the core? How do we reclaim our home? The hardcore cannot, must not, be fully awakened here on Virelia. The obsidian-eyed priestess stated firmly. Its ultimate destiny, its true purpose, lies intertwined with Sarn Leora itself. It must be returned to its home world, attuned safely to its original planetary matrix. Only there, within its native resonant field, can its full harmonizing potential be safely realized and channeled. Return. Elias balked, the practicalities crashing back in. Return to Sarn Leora. But Varn controls the entire system, his fleet, his defenses. It's suicide. Varn's control is an illusion built upon stolen power, lies, and pervasive fear. The third, gaunt priest countered, his eyes burning with conviction. His grip on the planet's resonance field is artificial, forced, inherently unstable. His power is brittle, like glass stretched too thin. The people of Sarn Leora remember the true queen. They inherently yearn for the lost harmony, not Varn's oppressive tyranny, the resonance of the true bond, amplified by the gently stirring core, channeled correctly. It will be a force Varn's corrupted technology and fear-based control cannot withstand. True resonance does not conquer by force. It reconnects, restores, reminds. The eldest priest stepped forward slowly, holding out a small, intricately carved crystalline shard that pulsed with the same warm, potent energy as the monoliths surrounding them. This conduit shard, attuned within this sacred circle, holds the unique resonance signature of your true bond and carries Virelia's ancient blessing. It will help guide you, shield you on your perilous journey home. It will amplify the core's latent power, focusing your combined intent. When the time is right for its influence to be felt, he gently pressed the warm, pulsing shard into Kaelith's waiting hand. Go now. Reclaim your throne. Queen Kaelith, fulfill the Salkyra's destiny. Elias Carrick, your path lies steadfastly beside her, no longer as a mere protector bound by law, but as a true partner, bound by fate, resonance, and heart. He raised his gnarled hand towards the shimmering energy barrier blocking the tunnel entrance. With a soft sigh, like exhaled breath, it dissolved completely, revealing Varn's soldiers still standing frozen for a moment, before slowly beginning to stir, looking around confusedly, shaking their heads as if waking from a strange dream. They will awaken shortly, the priest assured them calmly, with fragmented memories, perhaps a lingering headache, but no clear recollection of this place or our encounter. Virelia guards its deepest secrets well. Your path now lies elsewhere, with nods of profound gratitude to the ancient priests. Kaelith, Elias, and Nyra turned away from the circle of humming power. Kaelith carefully secured the glowing conduit shard to her belt, its warm light reflecting in her determined eyes. Elias walked steadfastly beside her, no longer feeling like a scientist caught helplessly in events beyond his control, but an active, willing participant, his past skills and newfound connection merging into a singular, focused purpose. Nyra held both their hands tightly, skipping occasionally now, humming a soft, complex, resonant tune that seemed to echo the planet's own deep, harmonious energy. Their improbable journey, which began with a violent crash on a desolate planet and a reluctant act of protection mandated by bizarre alien law, had led them through shared danger, ancient rituals, profound self-discovery, and the forging of an unexpected love. Now, bound together by a connection that felt undeniably real, fundamentally true, they faced their greatest, most daunting challenge, returning to the heart of the conflict, to the usurped throne world, armed not just with advanced technology and tactical skills, but with the subtle, pervasive power of resonance, unity, and a love freely chosen amidst the vast, indifferent stars. The perilous journey back to Sarn Leora had begun. The journey back towards the Sarn Leora system, aboard Kaelith's cloaked ship retrieved from high orbit, was fraught with constant peril, yet underpinned by a profound, palpable sense of unity and unwavering purpose that resonated between them. Using the conduit shard's subtle guidance, which seemed to anticipate patrol vectors and sensor sweeps, and Kaelith's intimate, innate knowledge of subspace anomalies and gravitational eddies known only to Sarn Leoran royalty, they navigated treacherous asteroid fields used as smuggler routes and bypassed Varn's heavily monitored primary space lanes. Elias, drawing fluidly now on his past conquered special projects experience with stealth technology, sensor spoofing, and tactical navigation, worked alongside Kaelith at the ship's complex helm controls, their disparate skills complementing each other seamlessly, anticipating each other's needs almost without words. Their interactions were no longer strained or awkward. The shared, soul-bearing experience in Virelia's resonance stream had forged a deep, unshakable intimacy, allowing for easy, open communication, collaborative decision-making, and quiet moments of shared affection and reassurance amidst the constant underlying tension of their mission. Nyra, sensing the fundamental shift in the dynamic between her protectors, the strength and harmony of their true bond, was noticeably calmer, more secure, her own innate connection to the slumbering heart core within her, seeming to pulse gently in harmonious rhythm with the bond between Kaelith and Elias. As they cautiously entered the outer periphery of the Sarn Leora system, the conduit shard held by Kaelith began to glow brighter, warmer, resonating strongly with their homeworld's ambient energy field. However, that field felt distorted, strained, dissonant, like a beautiful instrument played badly out of tune. The oppressive weight of Varn's artificial control was a palpable psychic static clinging to the system. Kaelith grew quieter, more introspective, the immense weight of returning to her besieged home, confronting the man who murdered her consort and stole her throne, settling heavily upon her. Elias offered silent, constant support, his hand resting reassuringly on her shoulder as she navigated, a simple gesture that spoke volumes more than words, grounding her, sharing the burden. They both knew a direct, frontal assault was impossible. Varn's fleet, bolstered by subjugated system defense forces, controlled the primary orbital approaches and planetary airspace with an iron fist. Their strategy relied entirely on stealth, surprise, precise timing, and the unpredictable, subtle power of resonance harmony wielded against technological might and fear. Following the conduit shard's increasingly insistent guidance, they navigated towards a chaotic cluster of unstable, resource-poor moons orbiting Sarn Leora. Using their significant gravitational distortions and natural high-energy interference fields as cover from Varn's sophisticated sensor grids, Kaelith identified an ancient, forgotten deep space relay station, hidden deep within an asteroid field, gravitationally bound to the largest moon, part of the old planetary defense network her father had commissioned decades ago, theoretically invisible to Varn's updated security protocols, powered by geothermal taps deep within the moonlet. Docking the sleek ship within the station's concealed hangar bay, they prepared meticulously for the final, most dangerous phase, the infiltration of the royal palace on Sarn Leora itself. Kaelith donned sleek, dark infiltration armor, flexible and silent, enhancing her natural speed and agility. Elias opted for modified Concord tactical gear he'd kept stored on the station, now subtly integrated with salvaged Sarn Leoran stealth tech provided by Kaelith. Nyra, understanding the gravity of the moment with an unsettling maturity, remained calm, clutching the small, smooth, oddly comforting black stone Elias had given her from Virelia 9, a tangible link back to the place their family bond was forged. The main throne room is the nexus of Varn's stolen power, Kaelith explained grimly, studying complex holographic schematics of the sprawling royal palace projected from her wrist device. The palace architecture itself was designed around resonance principles. It contains the primary amplification matrix for the entire planetary resonance field. He's been attempting to force his control, his disharmonious signature, onto the planet and its people through it, corrupting the natural harmony, amplifying fear, and suppressing dissent. She tapped a specific point on the schematic. It's also where he'll be most focused, most invested, and therefore, paradoxically, most vulnerable to a true harmonic counter-resonance. And the hard core, Elias asked quietly, checking the charge packs on his non-lethal stun rifle alongside his standard energy sidearm. How do we initiate the awakening? Once we reach the throne room, the Virelian conduit shard should interact synergistically with the Sarn Leoran amplification matrix, Kaelith replied, touching the warm, glowing crystal secured at her belt. If our true bond is strong enough, if our intent is clear and focused, and if Nyra is willing to consciously channel her innate connection, it should initiate the Salkyra's safe awakening sequence, the resulting resonance wave, guided by our combined will. It should theoretically disable Varn's corrupted technology, disrupt his forced control over the Matrix, shatter his fear-based hold on his guards, and hopefully reach the people across the planet, reminding them of the true harmony, The true queen. It was a plan reliant on a precarious combination of advanced physics, ancient prophecy, unwavering faith, and the fundamental strength of their newly forged connection. Using decaying maintenance tunnels and long-forgotten servant passages clearly marked on the ancient schematics Kaelith possessed, they bypassed layers of modern security checkpoints, the conduit shard occasionally pulsing softly, subtly, neutralizing localized sensor grids or distorting camera feeds, just long enough for them to slip past unseen. The journey through the underbelly of the vast palace was incredibly tense, filled with nerve-wracking close calls and moments where Elias's tactical skills in bypassing security systems and Kaelith's intimate knowledge of the palace's hidden architecture were absolutely crucial for their survival. They moved like ghosts through the shadowed corridors, a silent triad bound by shared purpose, love, and the fate of a world. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of tense silence and stealthy movement, they reached a pair of massive, ornately carved doors, the ceremonial entrance to the throne room. Heavy, dissonant energy signatures pulsed erratically from within, confirming Kaelith's assessment. Varn was inside, likely conducting some public ritual or broadcast designed to further assert his illegitimate authority and solidify his control over the planetary matrix. Taking a deep, steadying breath together, Kaelith nodded sharply to Elias. He quickly placed a small, localized sonic dampening charge onto the heavy door mechanism, activating it to override the complex locking sequence without triggering alarms. The heavy, ancient doors slid open with barely a whisper. The throne room was vast, opulent, adorned with the symbols of Sarn Leoran royalty, but the air felt heavy, stagnant, suffocatingly oppressive. Visible lines of dark, corrupted energy snaked across the beautifully inlaid walls like malevolent vines, converging sickeningly on the ornate, crystalline throne where Regent Varn sat. Monitors and control interfaces surrounded him like grasping metallic tentacles, feeding him data, amplifying his commands. He was older than Elias had pictured from Kaelith's descriptions, his face deeply etched with paranoia, ambition, and a cruel, pinched dissatisfaction, clad in ostentatious, overly elaborate robes that did little to hide the sophisticated military hardware integrated beneath. The elite shadow coil guards, silent and menacing in their black armor, stood rigidly along the walls, their faces hidden behind impassive dark visors. Varn looked up sharply, startled by their completely unexpected appearance, his eyes narrowing instantly with recognition, fury, and utter disbelief as he registered Kaelith standing defiantly before him. "You!" Varn snarled, scrambling awkwardly to his feet, momentarily losing his composure. "Impossible! How did you get past my defenses?" "My fleet. Your defenses are built on fear and control, Varn," Kaelith declared, her voice clear and strong, echoing with innate regal authority in the vast, corrupted chamber. She stepped forward boldly into the room, Elias moving smoothly to flank her protectively, Nyra holding tightly, trustingly, to his free hand. They are no match for true harmony, true resonance. Varn threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, grating, ugly sound utterly devoid of humor. Resonance, harmony, pathetic ancient superstition. True power comes from technology, from absolute control. He gestured imperiously, regaining his arrogance. The shadow coil guards lining the walls instantly raised their heavy energy rifles, targeting the intruders. "Seize them! Kill the man! But bring me the child, alive!" But as the black-armored guards surged forward, Kaelith raised the Virelian conduit shard high. It flared with sudden, blinding white light, bathing the entire throne room in the pure, cleansing energy of Virelia. amplified and focused by the true bond radiating powerfully from Kaelith and Elias. Simultaneously, Nyra closed her large violet eyes, concentrating fiercely, her small face serene. Elias felt an incredible surge of warmth, of pure, benevolent energy emanate from her, the heart core stirring, responding joyfully to the shard, to the true bond, to the presence of its home world's rightful matrix, and to Nyra's innocent, focused will. A powerful wave of pure, harmonious resonance pulsed outwards from the shard and from Nyra herself, washing over the throne room like a cleansing tide. It wasn't destructive like a conventional weapon, but profoundly, fundamentally disruptive to Varn's corrupted technology and the fear-based loyalty protocols ingrained in his guards. Energy weapons sputtered, sparked, and died in the guards' hands. Control consoles surrounding the throne showered sparks and went dark, their screens blank. The ugly, dark energy lines corrupting the room flickered violently and receded like dying vines shriveling from sunlight. The elite Shadow Coil guards staggered, dropping their useless weapons, clutching their heads in disorientation and sudden pain. Their advanced armor systems failing, their deep mental conditioning momentarily shattered by the overwhelming purity of the harmonic frequency. Varn himself cried out in rage and disbelief, stumbling back from the throne as the amplification matrix integrated into it overloaded spectacularly with pure, uncorrupted resonance energy. Rejecting his forced, disharmonious control, the room itself, the very architecture built upon ancient Sarn-Leoran resonance principles, seemed to awaken and respond. Patterns of soft, warm light, long dormant under Varn's reign, bloomed across the walls and floor, pushing back the oppressive darkness, restoring the room's original beauty. The ornate throne, actively rejecting Varn's corrupting influence, seemed to subtly withdraw, dimming its light, while the section of the floor directly before Kaelith, Elias, and Nyra rose slightly, smoothly, forming a natural, welcoming dais, acknowledging them silently as the rightful, harmonious focal point of the planet's energy. The heavy, oppressive atmosphere lifted instantly, replaced by a feeling of clean, vibrant, hopeful energy. The true, ancient song of Sarn-Leora beginning to reassert itself, clear and strong. Varn stared, aghast, his face contorted with fury and impotence, as his stolen power literally, tangibly dissolved around him. No! This cannot be. I am the regent. I control this world. It is over, Varn, Kaelith stated, her voice calm but utterly unwavering, filled with the quiet strength of rightful authority restored. Sarn-Leora rejects your disharmony. The true connection, the true harmony, is restored. The resonance wave, amplified now by the cleansed throne room matrix, pulsed outwards beyond the palace walls, washing silently over the capital city, spreading rapidly across the entire planet through the awakened natural energy field. It carried not just disabling frequencies for Varn's oppressive technology, but the unmistakable feeling of the true bond, the gentle promise of the awakening heart core, the deep, resonant memory of true harmony. People in the streets below stopped, looking up, confused at first, then sensing the profound shift, the lifting of the heavy, oppressive weight they had lived under for so long. Hope, long suppressed and brutally punished, began to cautiously stir in millions of hearts. Varn's remaining military loyalists across the planet found their equipment failing, their communications silenced, their authority evaporating as the planet itself actively rejected the usurper's reign in favor of its true queen. Defeated, isolated, surrounded by his deactivated, stunned guards and dissolving technology, Varn crumpled onto the steps below the now neutral throne, stripped bare of his stolen power, left only with his consuming, corrosive ambition, now rendered utterly impotent. Kaelith, with quiet dignity, ordered the stunned but functional royal palace guards, those who had served uneasily under Varn's rule, but whose loyalty ultimately lay with the true lineage, to take the former regent into custody. Kaelith, Elias, and Nyra stood together on the newly formed dais, bathed in the warm, harmonious light of the restored throne room. The Salkyra, the heart core within Nyra, pulsed gently now, its safe awakening initiated, ready to begin its long, slow work of healing Sarn Leora and stabilizing its connection to the wider galactic network. Elias looked at Kaelith, seeing her not as a queen, not as a fugitive, not as his legally mandated partner, but simply as the woman he had come to deeply respect, understand, and unequivocally love through trials of fire, fear, and resonant truth. He saw his own complex feelings mirrored, clear and steady, in the depths of her luminous violet eyes. This wasn't ancient law or cosmic prophecy dictating their connection anymore. It was conscious choice. It was love, freely given, hard-won, and profoundly felt. He reached out his hand, and she took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining naturally, comfortably, sealing their true bond, not with a planetary ritual or legal decree, but with a simple, profound human and Sarn Leoran connection. Nyra beamed, stepping between them, reaching up to hold both their hands, completing their triad, her soft hum now a joyful, melodic counterpoint to the room's restored harmony. The brief, brutal war for Sarn Leora ended not with a final, bloody battle, but with the quiet, irresistible, pervasive power of reconnection, restoration, and harmony, guided by Queen Kaelith, now partnered in rule and heart with Elias, whose unique scientific background and unexpected connection to resonance provided invaluable insights into rebuilding and healing, and centered around the hopeful presence of Nyra and the slowly, gently awakening heart core. Sarn Leora began the long process of healing. The restoration was slow, requiring patience, careful nurturing of the planet's delicate resonance field, and the painstaking rebuilding of trust among a populace scarred by Varn's tyranny. But the path forward was clear, illuminated by the true bond between their leaders. Together, Kaelith, Elias, and Nyra ushered in a new era for Sarn Leora, one founded not on ancient, rigid laws or imposed technological control, but on the living principles of balance, mutual understanding, cross-species collaboration, and the profound, unshakable strength found in a bond freely chosen, bridging worlds, cultures, and hearts. Their extraordinary journey, which began with a violent crash landing on a desolate, forgotten planet and a reluctant, impulsive act of protection, had culminated in the peaceful restoration of a kingdom and the forging of a unique, resilient family, resonant, true, and hopeful, standing together under the vast, watchful expanse of the stars. The future of Sarn Leora, and perhaps, eventually, worlds beyond, looked brighter, filled once more with the complex, beautiful music of harmony restored. Epilogue, Whispers of Harmony. 6 Sarn Leoran cycles, later roughly 8 Terran months, the royal gardens of the Sarn Leoran Palace, once neglected under Varn's utilitarian regime, were beginning to flourish again under the gentle influence of the stabilizing planetary field and the dedicated care of the palace botanists. Crystalline flowers, pulsing with soft internal light, chimed faint, melodic notes as gentle breezes stirred them. Elias sat on a simple stone bench, beneath a canopy of shimmering, silver-leafed trees, reviewing data on a handheld holographic projector. The data wasn't quantum field mechanics this time, but agricultural resonance patterns, optimizing crop yields in the provinces recovering from Varn's exploitative policies. He wore comfortable Sarn-Leoran attire, the flowing fabrics surprisingly practical. Kaelith approached, moving with her innate grace, though the weight of queenship seemed lighter on her shoulders now. She carried 2 steaming mugs. She handed one to Elias, a Terran blend of coffee he'd synthesized, a small taste of his old home. She held a fragrant Sarn-Leoran herbal infusion for herself. She sat beside him, close but not touching, a comfortable silence settling between them. The atmospheric resonance in the northern continent has stabilized ahead of schedule, Elias commented, gesturing to his projector. The new harmonic balancers based on Terrell's original designs, cross-referenced with Virelian field dynamics. They're working even better than anticipated. Kaelith nodded, a soft smile touching her lips. Terrell would be pleased. You honor his work, Elias. Your unique perspective has been invaluable. We honor it together. Elias corrected gently, meeting her gaze. The memory of the resonance stream, the raw intimacy of shared souls, was a permanent undercurrent between them, a foundation of trust deeper than words. Their bond wasn't always easy, navigating cultural differences, the demands of state, the lingering shadows of trauma, but it was real, strong, and constantly growing. A burst of laughter, clear and bright as tiny bells, interrupted them. Nyra, looking taller, healthier, her lavender skin vibrant, chaste shimmering, butterfly-like constructs of light that danced around her, playful projections generated by her own burgeoning control over the heart core's benign energies. She wore simple clothes, practical for play, her dark hair tied back simply. She stumbled, caught herself, and ran towards them, throwing herself into Kaelith's lap, then immediately leaning over to hug Elias tightly around the neck. Papa Elias, she chirped, using the informal title she'd adopted for him, a blend of Terran and Sarn-Leoran affection. Mama Queen, look, the lights know my feelings. She giggled as the light constructs swirled around her happily. Kaelith hugged her close, her expression softening with pure maternal love. The sadness Elias had first seen now replaced by a profound peace. Elias ruffled Nyra's hair, his heart swelling with an emotion he still sometimes found overwhelming. Scientist, guardian, partner, father. His life had become infinitely more complex, infinitely richer. They do. Little star, Kaelith murmured, kissing the top of Nyra's head. Just as this world now feels our harmony. They sat together for a long while as the Sarn-Leoran sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of violet, gold, and rose. Elias deactivated his projector. Kaelith leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. Nyra snuggled between them, her soft humming adding a gentle counterpoint to the garden's quiet music. They were an unlikely family, forged in fire and prophecy, bound by law and love, bridging worlds. The restoration of Sarn-Leora was far from complete. The galaxy still held dangers. But here, in this moment of quiet peace, surrounded by the evidence of healing, they were simply home, together. And the resonant harmony they created whispered outwards, a beacon of hope in the vast, starlit silence.